Hey now, good Monday afternoon, and welcome to 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you from 3 until 6 this afternoon. Plenty to get to regarding a busy weekend in the sports world. The Kansas City Royals didn't get swept. Yeah!
You know, I almost, if they had, we could have gone scorched earth on them today, and that might have made for more fun radio. But
yeah,
as it is, it was just, they lost the series.
Yeah.
They lost the series to the Oakland A's.
I've got some thoughts that are a little more existential than completely, nihilistic at this point.
Existential, who are you, Fulton?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time philosophizing recently.
Is that right?
Spent a lot of time deep in the depths of Wikipedia recently.
Okay.
I will save my takes on misanthropy and just get to existentialism with the Kansas City Royals. But we'll talk about the Royals' series loss to the Oakland A's coming up here in just a moment. Also coming up here in this opening hour of the show, we'll have the good, the bad, and the ugly weekend recap. Plus, Matt Verderame is going to swing by, national NFL writer for Sports Illustrated, on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline to talk all things National Football League. Also, other news that we'll get to today, Chris Klieman has a new contract at K-State. He's getting a nice payday. In fact, very nice. And for a program of K-State's stature, I think you should be very happy that your program, A, is just keeping Chris Klieman, and that's not intended to be an insult. B, that, you're willing to shell out the money. Not just that you're keeping him, but that you're willing to shell out the money to be able to keep him and now pay him. You have a top 25 program. You got to pay for a top 25 coach. That's what K-State is doing.
You're acting like a big time Power 5 athletic department. And the evolution towards Kansas State becoming exactly that continues apace with this extension that's going to put Chris Klieman in the top half of coaches' salaries in the Big 12.
Yeah, that is absolutely awesome. And he'll go up even a little bit more once Texas and Oklahoma leave this year. Well, Oklahoma specifically, I think, when Brent Venables leaves after this season. So very cool for Chris Klieman and K-State. We'll talk about that, what it means coming up later on in the show today. We've got some thoughts on the NFL outside of our chat with Matt. The draft is over. We're starting to get into the one-year veteran free agency deals this time of year. Offseason programs are underway. There's still some legitimate big or at least notable names still out there who are available. We already know the Chiefs signed Donovan Smith. Are there any other veteran free agents out there the Chiefs might be interested in? We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. We'll look ahead to the Royals-White Sox series. The vibes right now for the Royals are bad in and of themselves because the team stinks. But going back-to-back against the A's, which is, the saddest, in terms of crying tears, sad team in all of professional sports right now, maybe. And then to the White Sox, which have the worst vibes of any team, probably any team on earth. Everton won their Premier League match today, 3-0. Big, crazy British soccer news. They've been sad all year. I know a weird number of Everton fans. They even won today. Their vibes are better than the White Sox right now. So that's what the Royals are dealing with. We'll preview that series coming up here in just a matter of moments. Plus, we get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines. We're going to have our first What Is Wrong With You of the week, including a story that we had to pivot to within the last 10 minutes. We heard a story during our local news at the top of the hour, and we had to make a very sudden switch in What Is Wrong With You, brought to you by Top City Metal Supply.
Yes, hat tip to the Kansas Information Network for a completely new story that we have to do today.
An absolute banger. So we'll get to that coming up a little bit later on. And of course, your texts and your YouTube comments are welcome on the show throughout the day. Hit us up on the text line, 785-272-9429. Or you can jump into the comment section on YouTube. Our channel is called Sports on 580 WIBW. We would love for you to just go swing by, subscribe, check it out, and jump into the comment section and watch along. Appreciate all you guys listening and watching the show today. The Kansas City Royals, they drop 2 of 3 to the A's this weekend. Did not get swept. There was legitimate worry after Saturday.
Oh, yeah,
that might be happening.
And then the one nice thing that happened on the mound for the Royals, which was Ryan Yarbrough throwing 5+ solid innings, comes to an end when he takes a comebacker off the face.
Yep.
So, that's the kind of weekend it was. It was a 106-mile-an-hour comebacker to the face.
I think the "why can't good things happen to us" tropes from sports fans are pretty overdone. Every team at some point goes through down periods. Every single one. If you're a Royals fan right now, though, and you get one good pitching performance in a weekend against the worst team in baseball, and it ends with your guy getting hit in the face with a line drive in his first good start of the year, you're allowed to say it. I will give my dispensation. You can say it.
Yarbrough, by the way, placed on the 15-day injured list today with what the team is calling for now head fractures. We do not have a more in-depth report than that, but it did not look good when it happened. And all you can do is hope that Ryan Yarbrough has a speedy recovery, gets back on the mound soon. That is the scariest thing that can happen on a baseball field, just about, is the pitcher taking comebacker square off the kisser. And hopefully he's all right. Jose Cuas called up, by the way, in case you missed that piece of news.
Yeah, in terms of velocity and game violence and all of that, basketball, I mean, guys get hit in the head with the ball or get an elbow or whatever, which is never pleasant. But
the hard landing.
But, hockey, they've got helmets and visors. Doesn't always work, but they've got helmets and visors. Football, you've got a cage around your head at all times.
Mm-hmm.
Baseball, I mean, now more guys at the plate wear the C-flap. I think everyone does now, in fact, or almost everyone.
A lot of guys do. Yeah.
They have the extra long flap on the side of the helmet, because for a while there were a bunch of guys who were getting hit in the face with pitches. Pitchers have nothing. I guess in softball they do. But the softball also travels differently than a major league baseball. A pitch at 100 miles an hour, maybe not in Yarbrough's case, but getting hit 110 miles an hour right back at your face, yeah, that's going to end poorly. Just, you feel sick for Ryan Yarbrough and hope he's okay and is able to return as soon as possible. Outside of that, I'm going to say something nice about the Royals after this weekend. It has been at least a little while since they got embarrassed in a game. They have fought, I think, pretty hard in most of these games. They had a real chance against the A's on Saturday. They put up plenty of runs in, several games recently. The 3 before that, or the 4 before that. 8 runs, 10 runs, a 6-0 win, and 7 runs. Now, 3 of those games they lost, but you're still putting up runs, maybe against bad pitchers. But hey, beggars absolutely cannot be choosers right now.
They got a bunch of guys that are swinging the bats a lot better. And like Bobby Witt Jr.'s hit safely in every game in May. Last 2 weeks, MJ Melendez's OPS is up over 800. Last 2 weeks, Michael Massey's hitting over 300, starting to draw some walks, get on base. We were killing him for that. So we ought to at least mention that he is starting to get on base more proficiently. Nick Pratto broke the game open yesterday with that big 2-run double late, and he has been productive since the Royals called him up. There are some good things happening with the offense, and that's kind of what we anticipated, is that there was the possibility that this lineup could make some strides forward this season. And while the season-long numbers for Bobby Witt Jr. or MJ Melendez don't yet look the way you want them to look, there's no denying that over the last 2 weeks, really since after the Ohtani start against them that Friday night against the Angels on the road, really it's since then, that 12-13 game stretch, the bats have been productive. They have had some good days at the plate, up and down the lineup. You feel better about where those guys are. Michael Garcia has done nothing but hit since he's been called up. Freddie Fermin has been surprisingly productive in the spot starts that he's gotten. So there are good things happening at the plate. We hoped that would be the case, and indeed it has been the case. It was the case again over the weekend. It was the case yesterday. Sal Perez, I believe the longest home run of Salvi's career. Yesterday. Massive shot into the fountains in left center field. He had part of a 3-hit day for him. Vinny Pasquantino only had 1 hit on the weekend, but he was on base all the time.
1 for 9 at the plate, but he got on base 5 of 14 times. That's incredible. That a Royal walked 4 times in a series? That's including multiple times in a game. That's great.
Yeah, finding ways to get on base when the hits aren't falling in. Not really anybody else's stock in trade, but when Vinny can do it, it helps keep scoring opportunities alive for the middle of the lineup. There are good things happening. I stand by it. Good things happening with the Royals lineup. And I think it's going to keep happening. And I think that sooner rather than later, or I guess I should say eventually, I don't want to put added pressure on the young guys, but eventually you're going to see numbers season-long slash line numbers for guys like Witt and Melendez that are more in line with what we expect from them and what we expect from them in their second full seasons. Really, in MJ's case, it's almost his first full season in the major leagues. That's the good.
Here's the bad, and here's where things get a little bit more existential for me.
Okay.
It's just really hard for me to get excited about it when you know that there's impending misery or doom or just failure. This pitching staff is butt. It is so bad. Now, say something nice about the bullpen. They did great on Saturday. They come in and they shut things down, much to my chagrin, because they may or may not have had over 10 runs, and they scored 9 in the first 4 innings and none the rest of the game. But on a performance basis, they actually did pretty well shutting that thing down.
Yeah, they were good yesterday, too.
Yeah, they were great yesterday.
Scoreless ball yesterday in relief of Yarbrough.
But, man, these starters are terrible right now. And I refrain from saying that they are terrible in general, but right now, these guys are awful. Remember for a minute at the start of the season, man, Keller might have gotten it back. Keller might have gotten his groove back.
Got a new pitch. He's got the new pitch. He's got the curveball. I think they're onto it.
Brad Keller pitched 4 1/3 innings on Friday night, gave up 11 hits, walked 4 because he just refuses to throw the ball in the strike zone, struck out 1 batter, gave up 2 home runs, 7 runs total, 6 earned. If you only picked up one of those stats, it really doesn't matter which one you picked up because they all sucked. Every one of them was bad. And it tells you how good he was at the start because he's been bad for a while now, and his ERA is still only at 4.67. That was terrible. And again, he just can't throw strikes. Then you look at Brady Singer's outing in Game 2 of the series on Saturday. Was it like an abomination? No, but it was still solidly in the bad category. 6 hits, 5 earned, walked 3, 4 innings through 96 pitches. His ERA, Dan, is 8.82. And I know it's only 7 starts, but at the same time, dang, that's 7 starts. Like, that's just under a quarter of the season at this point for Brady. One more start will be essentially the quarter pole of the season for Brady Singer, assuming he gets a full 30 to 32 starts. 8.82 ERA. And I know that's not the only stat that matters, but he has had in 7 outings this year, 7 starts, 2 that have been, I would say, undeniably, objectively good. His first outing of the year back against the Blue Jays, it was on April 3rd. Only went 5, but he gave up just 1 run, did walk 3, 2 hits, 3 strikeouts. Pretty good, especially after he didn't do a whole lot at the World Baseball Classic, so essentially he had a short spring training. No problem with that. Then, 2 outings ago against the Diamondbacks on the road, 1 earned run on 5 hits, went 6 innings, struck out 5, did not walk anyone. That was what we hoped was the flashpoint moment. That was when, okay, this is what we saw in July and August of last season. This is what the Royals thought he could do. He's mixing up the pitch selection. This is working. In the last 2 starts since then, 6 2/3 combined innings, 11 hits, 13 earned runs, 2 homers allowed, 6 walks, 9 strikeouts. He's had 2 good outings and 5 disasters. Everything except outside of those 2 good starts I mentioned and ran through, 5 runs or more allowed. And when you're only going 4, 2 2/3, 5, they let him go 6 against the Giants. Like, you just can't live with that. That's not even like, we got to let him work through this. That is, you cannot live with pitching like that. And you're not taking Singer out of the rotation right now, obviously. No, Franco don't have anyone else to replace him.
Well, because this is, at least with him, you feel like a young pitcher who can work through some things, who's shown you as recently as last year what his performance can look like at its best. The hope was that last year's performance for Singer was establishing potentially a baseline and that there was a chance for him to take another step forward this year. Instead, what it's starting to look like is that last year's performance was his ceiling. I don't think Brady Singer all of a sudden irredeemable, terrible, DFA him, anything like that. We're not going that far. But This is what it looks like when like a middle of the rotation pitcher has a bad month of starts, not when an ace has a bad month of starts. So rather than feeling like, hey, maybe Brady Singer can take a step forward this year, now you just want him to get back to where he was. Now you just want him to get back close to that baseline performance of last year. And it has to start with command. I mean, 96 pitches in 4 innings, that's not going to cut it. He's full count on everybody. He gets behind guys. He's not throwing the changeup anymore, it doesn't look like. That was a big pitch for him last year against lefties.
It's for major regression. That's what Mike Matheny, who always defended his guys, and I'll give Matheny credit for this. At some point last year, he was like, he has to throw the changeup. He has to get that third pitch going. One of the rare times he actually called out one of his guys in front of everyone. And guess what? To your point, it worked. He finally started using it, and it worked.
Yeah.
And now we've regressed back to like reliever stuff. You can't survive as a 2-pitch pitcher.
Yeah, he's just been so heavy fastball slider. I want to make sure that that's not strictly anecdotal. Yeah, the changeup percentage is down from last year. He is throwing that pitch less, and he's throwing his slider less than last year. And he hasn't had a new pitch. It's a lot more fastballs. And the reason he's throwing the fastball a lot more is because he's behind in counts. And he has to throw get me over pitches to get back in counts. And those pitches are getting hammered. He's not getting ahead of hitters. It doesn't allow him to throw the changeup to lefties, or it doesn't allow him to throw that slider as a put-away pitch. Because we've seen, even in his bad outings, when he gets ahead of guys, the slider still to right-handers is a put-away pitch.
Mm-hmm.
He can still rack up the strikeouts. I think it's still there, but you put yourself in a bad spot when you can't locate early in the count and you're constantly in 3-ball counts. When you're living in 3-ball counts or 2-0 counts, or even just throwing pitch number 1 for a ball, you're putting yourself in a bad spot. And that's what Brady Singer is doing right now. I don't know if it's mechanical. I don't know what exactly it is. I know that this year, the one thing that has increased from previous years, we talk about extension, which is essentially how far from the mound are you releasing the ball, or how far out from the rubber, if you want to think about it that way, are you releasing the ball. Brady Singer's added a lot more extension this year, which in theory should give him more velocity. And maybe the velocity is holding. In fact, I'm looking, it's down a tick from last year with more extension, but it's also not moving either.
Yeah.
So it's a problem right now. Brady Singer's fastball command is the biggest problem. If that comes back, I still think that the stuff is there, the mentality is there for him to have some success. But yeah, it's been hard to watch with him. With the other guys, I mean, Brad Keller's unwatchable. And I'm not just saying that because the ERA still cosmetically looks fine. That's a dude that's nibbling.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to, like, if you're like Singer, he's fighting it. Obviously, he's fighting his command right now. But I don't feel like he's nibbling. There's a difference. Brad Keller, nibble. Everything just a little off the plate. He gets deep in counts. He walks a bunch of guys. He is really hard to stomach right now. And you're in a really bad spot with the rotation because the two guys you had hoped were going to be bedrock guys were Singer and Greinke. And Singer's struggling, and Greinke finally, after all these years, at least away from Kauffman Stadium, starting to show his age. Jordan Lyles is what he is.
Yep.
Brad Keller's not getting any better. And your fifth spot now continues to be a giant question mark after the Bubic injury and now the Yarbrough injury. And that is tough. When you have that many question marks in your starting rotation, you don't feel like you can get to a game when you're in a losing skid and feel like, okay, we're going to win today. We got a good shot today. We're handing the ball to this guy. The Royals don't have that. There's no stability in this group right now. And that permeates. That makes it hard to go out and win a ball game.
And there's, we've said so many times that there's no one knocking down the door, but there's not even anyone who you can go to and say, look, for 2 or 3 times through the rotation, we can live with it. I can give you an example. The Cubs have a guy named Adbert Alzolay, who they had bouncing between AAA and the majors for several years. They have, within the last 2 seasons, turned him into a full-time reliever because they said, hey, your stuff is too erratic when we have you switching roles. We're just going to make you a long reliever. And he's been good. He's actually been very good this year in that role. But he was a guy who the Cubs had lingering around. He's like slightly better than a quadruple A player as a starter. And they could say, look, somebody got hurt. Kyle Hendricks hurt his arm. Someone else got banged up. If we need to go, 3 trips through the rotation with Alzolay giving us 5 innings, we can live with it. That it's not going to completely sink us. Right now, you look at the Royals and, the open 5th spot, for example, and you say, quite literally, what options do you have? And to a point, that's not, JJ Piccolo's been around for a long time, not the one making the biggest baseball decisions, but you got to ask, how much at fault are the people who are in power right now? That ties back into what we discussed last week on the show that, how long is the grace period for the current management, both on field and in the front office for the Royals? This is the first time Piccolo has had full control of the roster. A lot of these drafts, a lot of these dudes who have been brought in, who have been given bad contracts, whatever, those are on Dayton Moore's head. And I'm not trying to continue to beat this dead horse, but it just shows you, I think you could argue the Royals are in a worse spot going into this year. And I think it's a little different now because Vinny has been so good and you're starting to see more positive returns from some of the other young guys. But I think you could argue going into this year, the Royals were in a worse spot than when they originally started the rebuild after the Hosmer, Kane, Moustakas era. I think you could at least make that argument because you've wasted so much time. And just look at this organization. There's just outside of the studs, there's nothing. There's no one. There's so many black hole pitchers and position players. It's unthinkable. It's the reason you lost to an A's team that is almost exclusively black holes because there's just no organizational depth at all. And
adding salt to the wound, the fact that a couple of guys who showed well for the A's on the weekend were a guy who started his career in the Royals organization, Esteori Ruiz, who they gave away in a trade for a bunch of Padres pitchers that didn't pan out.
Yeah,
and
that was a bust.
Brett Rooker, who, look, I don't blame the Royals for looking at what Brent Rooker was for them last year and saying, yeah, this isn't going to work. But still, that was a guy who was in your organization, and maybe with a steady run of at bats, he could have done this for you. Now, I don't know where you'd play him because he's another guy who's not really an outfielder. He's one of those outfielders, in air quotes, like Edward Olivares. The Royals have a million of those guys. So, maybe he just never would have found the opportunity, and he found a place where he's getting the opportunity. But still, it has to feel frustrating. And that is an interesting question. Are they in worse shape now than they were the year after they let all those guys walk? And then they knew all those guys were going to leave, Hosmer and Kane. And then they thought they were going to lose Moustakas. They brought him back for half the year. Are they in a worse spot now? That's interesting because the guys who are coming up now and impacting the big club, like Bobby Witt Jr. wasn't in the organization then, and Vinny Pasquantino wasn't in the organization then. I don't believe MJ Melendez or Nick Prado had been drafted yet. So on the one hand, the core guys weren't around. They really had to start from scratch with their farm system at that point. But it sort of feels like, okay, they've gotten those guys up and now they're still having to start from scratch with the farm system because there's just not a lot of impact talent down there right now.
And I know that guys are under team control for a long time. It's not like the clock is ticking, so to speak, on Vinny Pasquantino or Bob Witt. They're going to be around for a while, but it feels a little like wasted time, right? Dang, Vinny could have been, if we had some real pitchers, we might feel a little even better about this Vinny season because it wasn't going to be wasted on a last place team. Unfortunately, that's exactly where we are. It'll be Royals White Sox to open up this week, 4-game set at the K. We will preview the start of that series coming up a little bit later on this afternoon. Right now, we are going to get you a quick break. When we come back on the other side of this timeout, we'll recap the whole weekend with the good, the bad, and the ugly here on 580 Sports Talk. Recapping the weekend with the good, the bad, and the ugly here on 580 Sports Talk. By the way, we're going to have a busy 580 Sports Talk headlines coming up.
Yeah, we are.
Off the 5 o'clock hour. Bob Huggins.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the end of Bob Huggins' career.
Yeah, there is audio that is circulating on social media right now of Bob Huggins using an extremely inappropriate and vulgar homophobic slur multiple times on a radio show.
On live radio in Cincinnati.
Yeah, on one of the country's most powerful radio stations. Yeah, we'll get to that at 5 o'clock. Oh boy, Dan and I just heard the audio right now. Oh dear. All right, time to recap the weekend. Good, bad, the ugly style. I'll have you go first.
Okay, for my good for this weekend, just know, Royals fans, that the season is 162 games long, and no matter how bad your baseball team may be, there will be a period of time at some point this year in which they look good. And the evidence that I have for that is my beloved Colorado Rockies, who are in fact quite bad, have won 8 of 12, including a 5-1 week, which included a winning road series in New York against the Mets. Best team money can buy, huh? Yeah, looking a little funny in the light if you're giving up 13 runs to the Rockies on a Sunday afternoon in Queens. So yeah, I enjoyed my baseball team this weekend. And just know, Royals fans, eventually that time will come for you too.
My good is going to sound very bizarre. My good comes from two different places. Bad Bunny and NASCAR. That is where we're going with mine. One, I'm going to be honest. I tuned in for 5 laps of the NASCAR race at the Kansas Speedway. It was an awesome finish at the very end. Denny Hamlin picking up the win. I know our guy Vance was there at the race. Incredible finish.
They were rubbing.
End. Yeah, rubbing's racing.
Yeah, they were rubbing and they were racing. They were fighting.
Yeah, we got a fight at the end of it. Oh yeah, tremendous theater at the Kansas Speedway. And also this weekend, the WWE Backlash pay-per-view live from San Juan, Puerto Rico. I didn't realize how many wrestlers throughout history have been of Puerto Rican heritage. I knew of some. They had Bad Bunny come out.
Mm-hmm.
If Bad Bunny,
international pop sensation,
the most streamed artist on Spotify, like the biggest pop music act in the entire world. He just loves wrestling and has his whole life and wrestled at WrestleMania last year. And they're like, "Oh, dang, dude, you can actually go." He's like, "Yeah, I know I can." He was in one of the main events of the event, and it was incredible. He put on an amazing show. The crowd went nuts. One of the best crowd pops I've ever seen in my life. It was awesome. They put on a great show. And of all people, Bad Bunny was one of the best performers in all of wrestling in the past year. Any bad for you this weekend?
What happened to Ryan Yarbrough? Pretty bad. Again, wish for a speedy recovery for the Royals left-hander. He's throwing a good game. Velocity was ticked up a little bit. It looked like he was finally kind of getting extended into that starter's role, and he looked sharp even against that crummy lineup. And it was a sorry way to see his outing end. Hope he's all right.
My bad, and I don't feel sympathetic for them, is the St. Louis Cardinals, who I saw someone describe this as chauvinism. The Cardinals thought the Cubs were dumb. They thought they could fix Wilson Contreras' defense. They've talked about how he's a great clubhouse guy, and they need his bat in the lineup. But they wanted a good defensive catcher because, Yachty and all that. They knew Wilson Contreras was not that. And yet they still signed him for $87.5 million. And now, 34 games into their season, they have removed his full-time catching duties. Then they're like, we'll play him in the outfield. And one day later, their manager said, no, we're actually not going to do that either. He's just going to DH. Maybe he'll catch again someday. You gave him $87.5 million, and within 34 games of his first of 5 years under contract, you've already taken away his job.
They're panicking.
How dumb are you?
They're panicking. They don't know what to do.
I love it.
They're not used to being this bad, and they don't know what to do.
I adore it. Ollie Marmol looks like a clown, by the way. Not a good manager. Any ugly for you?
Yo, Glenn Kuiper. What in the world?
Yeah, man. If you didn't see this weekend, Glenn Kuiper, the play-by-play TV voice of the A's, during the pre-show was talking about on Bally Sport. Is it Bally they have?
No, they got NBC.
Oh, NBC Sports,
SN
right.
Bay Area. Yeah, he was talking about the weekend trip that the A's had to Kansas City and what they got to do on Friday before the game. They went to Arthur Bryant's, and they also went to a certain baseball museum, the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. Notice how I was very careful with that first word. Glenn Kuiper was not, and a hard R came out for Glenn Kuiper in a way that, for one, most people are not going to have the hard R come out like that. And two, if ever there was a slip of the tongue that would make you stop in the moment and correct yourself, wouldn't it be that?
Yeah, that word doesn't slip out. I'm willing to hear what his, excuse for that it was an accident is or was, but that word doesn't just slip out.
No.
I've never accidentally said that word.
Not the hard R, man.
We've been in front of a lot of microphones on camera a lot. That's not a word that just slips out. Yeah, that's my ugly too. And with that, we've got to get to a quick break. Matt Verderame's up next on 580 Sports Talk.
Understand football, Mark.
Man, pain heals. Chicks dig scars. Glory lasts forever.
How can he not be romantic about football, man?
Matt Verderame of Sports Illustrated joins us every Monday, bottom of the 3 o'clock hour, to talk all things NFL. You can find his work in Sports Illustrated and at SI.com. And you can also find him on Twitter at Matt Verderame. But before we get to the football, Matt, you had a big baseball weekend. I know you got to go see my favorite team, the Chicago Cubs, put that on Twitter. And also your favorite team, the A's, actually won a series against the Royals. How about that?
So the A's, I almost don't like to admit that I'm an A's fan, but yes, they finally won a series. They stink, and I hope their owner's forced to sell immediately. I did go to the Cubs game where I was actually in Chicago with my wife and a friend of ours for the Blink-182 concert last night at the United Center, and so we were just walking around Chicago. So let's go to a baseball game. It was great. It was perfect weather. Went 14 innings. So we got a bunch of free baseball. It was a good weekend. Can't complain.
Yeah, no, nothing beats a weekend afternoon at the ballpark. Well, Matt, we appreciate you joining us as always. First thought, the news broke last week after we had chatted with you. I think it was Wednesday early evening when the Kansas City Chiefs signed Donovan Smith, who is apparently, based on remarks today, going to be the starting left tackle for the Chiefs. First things first, were you surprised when that news came down that the Chiefs were signing the former Buccaneer?
I was a little surprised. I wasn't shocked. And I know right after he signed, whether it was Wednesday or Thursday, I can't remember, but I I did a little reporting on that and talked to a few sources and was told essentially, look, he's playing left tackle. And Juwan Taylor is going to be the right tackle. And so I think the one question I've gotten the most from Chiefs fans has been, well, we thought Juwan Taylor was going to play left tackle, and what happened? Well, essentially, look, the reality is that the Chiefs, my belief is that they wanted a tackle in the first round of this draft, and they could not get one because the run went so early that they were shut out. I mean, they would have had to trade next year's first and stuff like this, stuff that they were not going to part with, that no team would have parted with. So once that happened, they took Wayne Morris in the third round, and I think he's a guy that they certainly like. He's top 100 pick, but I don't know that they're going to just say, hey, he's going to get a job day one, and I don't think you can blame him for that. So it kind of left them in a spot where it was, okay, Juwan Taylor, left or right side, fine. We got one of our tackles. Need another one because Lucas Niang is still a guy who you don't really know what he is. I don't think there's anybody else in that depth chart who's going to play tackle. They needed a third tackle, even if you love Niang. Unless you were confident with going with Niang and Morris at right tackle and at swing, you needed another guy. And I think they looked at Donovan Smith and said, a lot of experience. He was not good last year. I think they would tell you that, but he was really beat up with a thumb injury and an elbow injury. They think he's going to snap back to form. And if you get Donovan Smith, you're not going to move him from left to right and Taylor from right to left. You're just going to leave them where they played. So I think in the end, it made the most sense.
We heard when Juwan Taylor was signed during the first wave of free agency, and he got that big 4-year, $80 million contract from the Chiefs, that they liked his ability to play on both the left and the right side, and it was assumed that he was going to swoop in and be the left tackle, and I think that was even publicly acknowledged at one point around that time. What do you think, or what do you know those conversations were like with Juwan Taylor? Do you think it went pretty amicably that, hey, at least for one more year, you got to go back to the right side, even though maybe you were signed thinking you'd play on the left? You think, not animosity, but how do you think those conversations went down with Juwan Taylor?
I think it was fine when Juwan Taylor looked down, so he got 4 years and $80 million. I think he probably got over it pretty fast. Look, I think, quite honestly, for Juwan Taylor, is that not easier? I mean, you're staying where you are now, right? I mean, maybe you're a little miffed that you had to prepare mentally, and now you got to switch back. But it's not like they switched them back on August 20th. Like, I don't think he's going to care. If I was him, I wouldn't. Now, I'm not him. Maybe he cares. I wouldn't think that he would. Orlando Brown was different. Orlando Brown really wanted to be a left tackle. Like, forced his way out of Baltimore because he wanted to be a left tackle. Juwan Taylor forced his way out of Jacksonville. He just became a free agent, and he decided to take the money Kansas City was offering. I think this is a pretty seamless thing. Like, if you're Juwan Taylor, you're probably fine staying right where you were. It makes your life easier, and since you don't have to learn a whole new position. If you're Donovan Smith, it's easy because you've played left tackle your entire career. And there's no telling what's going to happen in the future. But Juwan Taylor might very well choose left tackle next year. I mean, Smith has signed a 1-year deal, and Morris projects as a right tackle. I don't think anybody thinks he's a left tackle. So let's say Morris works out, and Taylor's probably going to the left side. I think there's a very good chance that at some point here in this contract, Taylor plays left tackle for Kansas City. Now, of course, Donovan Smith could come in and just be unbelievable, and then they bring him back. But last year he struggled. Is he going to be better this year? I would think so if he's healthy. How much better? We're going to find out. But yeah, I think if you're Taylor, look, you're better off finding out now than you are in the middle of training camp.
Our guest is Matt Verderame of Sports Illustrated. He joins us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline and does so every Monday at this time here on 580 Sports Talk. You can find Matt's work at Sports Illustrated, online in the magazine, and on Twitter at Matt Verderame. Matt, what's next for the Chiefs then? Do you think that they will continue to monitor the free agent market and might have some needs that they address with a short-term veteran contract? Or are they going to be looking more inwardly and trying to figure out some extensions for some of their own players as their top priority before training camp opens up?
Yeah, I think it's probably the latter. I think at this point for the Chiefs, you pretty much know who's on this roster, right? I mean, you go into camp with 90 guys, and every team always loves to say, hey, every spot's open, but we all know in reality that's not true. I mean, I haven't sat down and done this yet with the Chiefs roster. I'll try to do it, probably right around the end of July. I would think off the top of my head, 50 spots are pretty much filled out for this team. I mean, maybe it's a little less. Maybe it's like 47, 48. But they know it's on the team. And the guys who are competing are guys at the very bottom of the depth chart who are going to be playing teams, stuff like that. And the guys who don't make it are probably going to be on the practice squad. So I think now, yeah, it becomes Chris Jones. It becomes L'Jarius Sneed potentially. I think those are the two guys right off the bat, especially Jones, that you look at and say, okay, what's going to happen here? Willie Gay is a guy that you look at and go, what's going to happen with him? I mean, he's eligible for an extension. I don't know if he's going to give one, but he's eligible. So, yes, I think those are the guys you start looking at now and saying, okay, realistically, what does it look like going forward? McKinnon's back in the fold. I think it's a big deal for them. I think the biggest thing now for the Chiefs, is kind of just figuring out the next couple of months contract-wise for guys internally. And then, look, you're always keeping an eye out for post-June 1 cuts. What happens if DeAndre Hopkins gets cut? I think they would monitor that. But, I think for the most part now, it's internal as we go through OTAs and mandatory minicamp.
Speaking of the free agent market, potential post-June 1 cuts, who are some of the most interesting players that are either still available or might become available that you think could potentially, maybe not swing a championship, but could bolster teams with championship aspirations or playoff aspirations?
It's a good question. And to be very honest with you, I'd have to sit down and really look at all those guys and really kind of parse through contracts. There's so many different mechanisms that can change things. But Hopkins is a guy that obviously stands out. I mean, Hopkins is the guy that if he becomes a free agent, he could do nothing and he could play 10 games next year, and it could be kind of the beginning and the end of his career. He could also have 1,400 yards and it wouldn't shock me. I still think he's capable of that just based off of what he did last year and the limited time he was able to play after that 6-game suspension. But there are guys I would honestly point to that are even still out there just flat out on free agency. I mean, Justin Houston, Jason Pierre-Paul, Marcus Peters, those are all former Ravens who are still free agents. Those guys can play. Those guys, especially Houston and Peters, they can still really play. There are guys. I mean, there are real guys. Maybe I'm slipping. I think Yannick Ngakoue, I believe, is still a free agent. There are a lot of players who are still out there, who are still available, who I don't know if they could swing a championship, but they could be plus players for you. They could be, not just starters, but good starters. And I think, once you get past June 1, the one thing I would say, that's when you start keeping an eye on guys who maybe wanted an extension this off season and couldn't get one. And then it becomes, okay, well, are we going to trade this guy? Because it's now or never. That's when it becomes, what if Brandon Ayuk says, I want to trade, I'm done. What if Dave Davis says, I want to trade and get an extension? Those are just two examples of guys that you could go on and on about. But I do think there is going to be some movement after June 1st before camp, because there always is. Last year, the big example was James Bradbury, who got cut by the Giants, signed with the Eagles, and was fantastic. Was an all-pro for Philadelphia.
We're chatting with Matt Verderame, NFL writer for Sports Illustrated. He joins us every Monday here on 580 Sports Talk. You can go find him on Twitter at Matt Verderame, and of course, go check him out and all of his work at Sports Illustrated and SI.com. Matt, it's been made official by the NFL within the last 15 minutes or so here. There were some rumors today that maybe the NFL schedule was going to be delayed, but it is going to come out on Thursday night. Who do you think the Chiefs are going to end up playing week 1 on that Thursday night that the champion always plays?
The Eagles. I think it's going to be a Super Bowl rematch. Because if you think about it from the NFL's perspective, that is the most juicy game they could pass, right? It's going to be a home game. And it's almost never, in fact, I don't think it ever has been a divisional game. And really, if you're in the NFL, maybe it would be the Chargers. You're not putting the Raiders or the Broncos in that spot. So you're probably playing the Bears over in Germany. That's been rumored for what feels like forever. I don't think they're playing the Lions. That would be a bizarre choice. So then it's left to Philly, Buffalo, Miami, and Cincinnati. And I know the Tyreek Hill thing's there. I don't think that's enough of a storyline. I also don't think the NFL is going to place Miami in a pecking order over Buffalo, Cincinnati, and Philadelphia. So I think it's either Philly, Cincy, or Buffalo, and I just think Philly makes the most sense. It was the last game we saw. It was a great game. Both those teams have great quarterbacks. Hurts just got the brand new deal. I think, and it's an interconference game. Like, I think you're better off letting Buffalo and Cincy be games later in the year when you're really fighting for seeding. I think Philadelphia makes a lot of sense.
I know every year, at least up until this point, Matt, you used to go through every single game of the NFL schedule. All, what was it, 273 now that they have 17 games or whatever the total number is? It's a ton of games. Or no, I guess it'd be 272. Are you, A, going to do that again? And B, how excited are you to do that again?
So I've talked about this with people at the Powers BNSI, and I am not going to do that this year in terms of the piece I used to do, because that thing was a monster, and we have the great Connor Orr. And Connor, who's a colleague of mine, does great work. He does a very similar piece he puts out in August. And so Connor's got the seniority on that baby. That's his to deal with. However, I'll put out a whole thing on Twitter, I'm sure, where I'll go through and I'll give my records predictions. I know I've already written it up essentially. Well, I shouldn't say I've written it up. I've framed it out for the AFC. I got to wait to see how the schedule shakes, but I've framed it out. So I will be doing one for the AFC for SI. But yeah, I'll go through. I'll have some fun with it. I'll circle my winners and I'll put it out on Twitter and have some picks. But I think when you really look at this league this year, I don't think you're going to have like a huge difference in who the best teams are. I mean, free agency was just so weak this season. There weren't these massive trades, in my opinion, swung the league like we saw last year. I think the teams that were the best last year in a lot of ways are going to be the best teams this year. I don't think any really good team got weak, and I don't think any really bad team got great. So I think it's going to be a little more status quo maybe than we're normally seeing.
To check out all of Matt Verderame's work covering the NFL, head to SI.com and check out Sports Illustrated. You can also find him on Twitter at Matt Verderame, and he joins us every Monday here on 580 Sports Talk to talk all things NFL. Matt, we appreciate the time, and we will talk to you after the schedule comes out next Monday.
Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
That's Matt Verderame from Sports Illustrated. Great stuff as always. Coming up in the 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk, we'll get to the new extension for Chris Klieman. He is getting a ton of cash. What does that mean for K-State? We've also got our first What is Wrong with You of the week. Plus, we'll follow up on something we asked Matt about in the remaining free agents. Do any of them make sense to the Chiefs, and where might some of the others be headed before the training camp era begins for this summer? We're going to take a quick break. We'll get to all that next hour on 580 Sports Talk.
John Deere compact utility tractors are
Hey now, 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. Just getting started. I'm Brendan Dworzynski. He's Dan Lucero. We're with you until 6 o'clock tonight when Royals baseball will take the airwaves here on the Sports Voice of Kansas as they start a 4-game series with the Chicago White Sox. Coming up here in this hour of 580 Sports Talk, we'll get to Chris Klieman and his new contract in just a moment. We've also got What Is Wrong With You, sponsored by Top City Metal Supply. And we'll take a look at who is still available on the NFL free agent market. Does anyone make sense for the Chiefs? And why are some of these guys still free agents? We'll talk about that coming up later on this hour. We've also still got an absolutely jam-packed edition of 580 Sports Talk headlines coming up for you, including what may have been the end of an all-time great college basketball coaching career. We'll talk about that coming up a little bit later on in the show. We'll preview Royals, White Sox, all that, and much more. We'll get to your texts. Our text line number is 785-272-9429, and we will get to your comments on YouTube as well. Our YouTube channel is called Sports on 580 WIBW. Very easy to go find it. Just go to YouTube, youtube.com, go to the search bar, and just search for Sports on 580. That's all you have to look for. We will pop up. We'll be the first result. That's where you can subscribe and check out all of our video and live stream content. Chris Klieman got a new contract this weekend, and when the news broke, was in such mode about it that I actually forgot to put this into our show notes when I started preparing them today. And I come in and Dan had edited it, and I said, oh yeah, that probably is a pretty big deal. Because like in my head, I thought, yeah, you're going to let this guy go? Like, you're not letting this guy walk. He's going to get his money at some point. He'll be around for the long haul, all that. But I do think it is important. And I saw some K-State fans make note of this. And if you are a Kansas State fan, would love to hear your opinion on this, either on the text line or in the YouTube comments. They're shelling out some cash for Chris Klieman. I mean, this is not just, yeah, okay, here's a token 100K raise or something like that. No, he is getting, in 8 years, $44 million contract with a raise of $1.5 million on average per year for an average value of $5.5 million per year. That is no longer, well, that's like good for K-State kind of money. That's good money. That is top 25 coach in the country money. And for what it's worth, Chris Klieman is indeed a top 25 football coach in the country. Bare minimum, I think. Like, I don't think you could name 24 better than him. But he is in that echelon in terms of what he is as a coach and recruiter and everything he's done at K-State so far. He's now got a Big 12 championship already under his belt. Haven't been a whole lot of those in K-State history. He now owns one of them. And he's getting paid, I think, deservedly so. Again, the reason this was like barely even on my radar after I saw the news break is like, well, yeah, what are you going to do? You're going to let him walk away? You're going to go let him flirt with, Auburn when they have to fire Hugh Freeze in a year? You're going to, let him be searched out by, some school with deep pockets in the South and the SEC or someone in the Big Ten, Iowa, if they eventually man up and fire Kirk Ferentz and his entire family? Like, no, you're not going to mess around with that. You've got to keep this guy. But I think for certain fan bases, there's always a little bit of worry that what if, and there's the boogeyman programs. We saw this to a slightly different degree just this past offseason, right? Early in the offseason at the end of the college football year with Lance Leipold, right? He was on staff at Nebraska. He's from, north of where he works and lives right now. Nebraska needs someone who's going to turn around that program. There was kind of a boogeyman hanging around like, what if they make an offer? What if they want to go after him? If you're Kansas State, maybe it's, well, dang, he's from Iowa. Like, that's probably his dream job, to go to the University of Iowa and to modernize that program, or he'll be made the governor if he's able to do that. Like, who knows? Or maybe it's an SEC school seeing, dang, this dude with that roster won the Big 12 and beat undefeated TCU. Dang, like, we could use that in our conference, in the new Power 2, whatever. I'm not saying that K-State fans, because I don't want to speak for you, expected him to leave, but I think it is very important that this guy got the money and got the commitment. More important than the years, because 8 years, if he keeps coaching well, I know he's not exactly, young for a head coach, but 3 years from now, if things are going well, he'll get another 3-year extension. Like, the years don't mean much to me. The total money and the per year value, that tells me this is commitment. This is a lot of money for our athletic department, and we're going to pour it into you because we have faith you can get this done and that you have gotten it done. And that's a big deal. That says a lot. And frankly, because everything is recruiting, it's recruiting. Like, he's not going anywhere. You want to win? You saw what our team was last year? 10 wins, NFL talent, more NFL talent this year. Come here. You're going to get to play for Chris Klieman and the staff. It's perfect storm for K-State, and I'm glad they got it done.
In the new Big 12, there is a power vacuum. With Oklahoma and Texas not a part of the league, there's going to be opportunities for athletic programs to establish tentpole status in the Big 12 conference. And if you're going to be a tentpole program of a Power 5 league, it's a combination of stability and success that's going to get you there. And Kansas State took a giant step forward towards ensuring both of those continue for some time by extending Chris Klieman. You're absolutely right. It was never not going to happen. But now that it has happened, and now that we see that the money puts him or is expected to put Klieman in the top half of Big 12 coaches in terms of average annual value of his contract. We see that Kansas State is willing to be competitive in that market. They are not going to lose a coach because they're going to be too cheap to keep one. That's important because you don't want to be seen. No school, no program wants to be seen as a stepping stone program. And I don't believe that Kansas State views itself as a stepping stone program. Of course, part of that is they were blessed for so long with a guy who was totally content to work the miracle he worked in Manhattan for 25 years. Like that is, I mean, once in a lifetime, once in a century type of longevity that just you're not going to see in college football maybe ever again with what Bill Snyder represented and the years he gave to that program. But you have to be competitive in terms of salary. You have to be competitive in terms of facilities, and you have to be competitive on the field if you want to keep a good coach around for a long time. And Kansas State has made gigantic strides in all of those departments. And I think it's emblematic. It's just another milestone in the progress that this athletic department, that the Kansas State athletic department has made in the last half a decade even, where football is back to the top of the Big 12. They won the Big 12 conference first time in a decade. Basketball, another deep tournament run. Their third Elite Eight in a little over a decade. And a new coach who has completely revitalized that program. And to say that Jerome Tang revitalized Kansas State basketball feels like an understatement. He rebirthed it. It is reborn in Jerome Tang's image. It is reborn in a lavender image. You've also got the new facilities. Every week it feels like they're announcing something. They announced a new indoor track facility today. Like it feels like every week it's sprouting from the earth in Manhattan. New buildings or upgraded facilities. I don't. It almost makes me wonder if a new basketball arena might be next. Like there's so much happening.
You're not the only one thinking about that.
There's so much positive momentum for Kansas State athletics. Like at the rate Gene Taylor's going, they're going to name something after him on campus before he's done, because so much of this has happened under his watch. You go back to the last time it was this good to be a supporter of K-State athletics, probably a decade ago, when you had the triple year where baseball and basketball and football all won the Big 12 conference. That was not momentum sustained. That was not momentum that fed on itself and continued to generate success, because Bruce Weber didn't have it like that, because there was always an expiration date on Bill Snyder's tenure in Manhattan. It was going to end at some point. You could see the end. Even in 2012, 2013, you knew this is not going to last forever. Nothing does, but like you were closer to the end than the beginning of that tenure, and that much was obvious. What is happening now in Manhattan, what is happening now with Kansas State athletics, feels like it is sprouting into something even bigger. And it is becoming, we talk about brands all the time in college sports. Like, is Kansas State and their brand. I think their brand is a bigger deal than a lot of people want to give it credit for. How many high schools use the Power Cat nationwide? I can think of at least a couple in Nebraska I encountered. A lot of high schools. Some in Eastern Colorado, Fleming High School, Eastern Colorado, I know does. Like, there's a recognizable logo, there's a recognizable primary color, and they stand to be a program that leads the way in the new Big 12. Their football program may not be Alabama's, their basketball program may not be Kansas's, but it is stability and success that gives Kansas State an opportunity to elevate its brand in a college sports landscape where that is all the more important, and in a new Big 12 where they have a chance to be one of the programs in the Big 12. And they are not the only program in the new Big 12 that has that opportunity. That opportunity exists in Lawrence. I mean, that opportunity exists in some other places in the new Big 12. The opportunity exists in Houston. Opportunity exists in Stillwater. But Kansas State is seizing its opportunity, not just the winning, but now making sure that this coach, who has managed to, in a way that the first replacement for Bill Snyder couldn't, maintain the image and maintain the identity and grow on the identity of Kansas State football. Making sure that he's roaming the sidelines of Manhattan for a long time to come is a big, big step toward ensuring that this continues and the growth of Kansas State athletics continues.
I want to revisit one of the first points you brought up about, if you can't retain someone, it's not because of a lack of financial investment. This is a lot of money. $5.5 million a year over the course of 8 years is a lot of money. And that's important. And you want to keep your coach happy. And he has earned that. There's no doubt in my mind, not even a question, a shadow of a doubt. He has earned that kind of money. And when you talk about, is someone else going to be interested? Again, I'll use this example. And there's no ties here. There's no connection. I'm just connecting dots. What could make sense? Iowa fires Kirk Ferentz, or he retires because they say you have to fire your son or whatever. Iowa said, we want that. We want a guy who can keep a lot of the same things we are doing right now, but modernize it, and maybe we can actually score more than 8.5 points a game. We want Chris Klieman. We're going to pay for him because we're the Big Ten, and we can do that. K-State is not going to just, we just got walked over. Oh, well, that happens sometimes. We had a good coach, and he left, like a G5 program. That's not going to happen. And again, I don't make any of these comments like disparagingly about where K-State stands financially, but I think that's kind of been a perception, maybe from some fans on certain levels of the defeatist spectrum, but also from outsiders that, it's K-State. Like, that ain't Big Ten money. That's not SEC money. No, this is competitive money. Again, this is top 25 coach in the country, near the very top of an Autonomy 5, Power 5 conference kind of money. They're going to make that commitment. Now, where I'm most curious about this, does this come with other financial commitments? And I don't know, and maybe this has already come out and I've missed it. I assume once we get official word from Kansas State and they make the contract public, because as a public university, they do have to do that. What else comes with this? Again, to use the cross rivalry example, when Leipold got his new contract, it also included a bump in the assistant pool money.
Right.
And also, KU's got plenty of other issues, so it included, a promise that we're going to fix the stadium and we're going to fix the locker rooms and things like that. K-State doesn't need that part of it, but I think it is valuable to say, hey, we're going to also increase our assistants pool by $1 million. That's $100K for all 10 on-field assistants, just as an example. Or we're willing to shell out for 5 more analysts. We're going to make your staff look like Billy Napier at Florida. You're going to have 98 analysts in the box during game days. Whatever it ends up being. Somewhat tongue-in-cheek right there. But are there other things that come with this? Because that can be important too, because part of keeping Chris Klieman happy and keeping the status quo is when, just as a random example, when Ole Miss needs a new defensive coordinator, and they've got that SEC money, that ESPN money, they can't say, ooh, we get our pick of whoever we want. Okay, we want Klanderman. We want Joe Klanderman, and he's going to be our guy. Well, he's going to be less tempted to make that move. And again, I'm just throwing out random names here, but he's going to be less likely to make that move if he's going to be making competitive money at Kansas State. So that, I'm not saying that's not a part of this, but that's the next step I want to see is what else does this include? Because I would imagine it does. I would imagine if K-State is willing to commit this much money to Chris Klieman and at some point more to facilities, more to the basketball program. We had a comment on YouTube that said maybe commitments to other sports. Clearly, they are all in on where this athletic department is right now and where they are headed at this time. So I assume there's going to be more. I'm just curious what that will end up looking like. And maybe there are facilities things that Klieman asked for. Like, hey, this is what I want for myself. And also I want, something else in the stadium. I want something else in the team facility, whatever. I have no idea.
I want a water slide. I want a water slide that is just for me. That's what I would ask for.
I would push my luck. Like, what else can I get here? I want you to actually go find Snapple Pink Lemonade in the glass bottles, not the plastic ones. I want you to find the glass bottles, and I want them in my office every day.
I want to be able to water slide from the top floor of the Veneer complex out to my car, and I only want it to be exclusive for me.
Maybe they'll do it.
I just won the Big 12. It's the least you can do for me.
This is a big deal for Kansas State. I'm happy for Chris Klieman. I'm happy for the program. This needed to be done, and I'm glad they got it done. And this sets the bar for who's next. And I'm not going to pretend to know who is next in the Big 12 up for a contract. I guess coaches can get contracts or extensions or whatever anytime. But, if Baylor has another really good year and Dave Aranda goes to the table and says, hey, look, I've got opportunities. Jimbo ain't going to be there forever at Texas A&M. I've been there before. Someone else might come offering me. Maybe Lincoln Riley decides to realize that defense is, I guess Aranda's a head coach now, but you understand what I'm saying. Like somebody else could come in and he'll say, hey, I saw what Klieman got. I've had that kind of success. This is what I want to get. K-State is now the bar setter. And frankly, if you're a school like Oklahoma, you're probably thinking, we're giving a lot more money than that to the guy we hired last year. How'd we finish? How'd we do last year?
Go?
Not all that great. No, this is cool. And it's going to be such a new world because as much as, it's weird to say Big 12 fans when talking about like being a fan of the conference itself, but as much consternation as there's been over, we don't need Texas and Oklahoma. I mean, those have been the big brands for a long time, really for the entire history of the conference. How many times in a row did Oklahoma win the league? And how many times total did they? Like
it was a lot.
Over half the total years in the Big 12, something like that. It's going to be different. And the opportunity is there to be different and make yourself stand out, but also to win the league a lot. I think that's the general perception. And tell me if I'm wrong, but that's the general perception is that without those huge brands, it's open. It could be K-State, it could be Cincinnati, it could be UCF on a good year, it could be Baylor, it could be Oklahoma State.
And how did those brands build their brand in the first place? They won. They won their leagues and they got into big bowl games and they won big bowl games. Like
cool logos and brands like the burnt orange and the horns up and whatnot. That doesn't mean jack if you don't win.
Right.
Like if Texas had been terrible in the 50s and 60s, maybe we're looking at a different UT logo.
If Bud Wilkinson had stayed in Laramie and never come to Norman, what's the difference between Norman and Manhattan? Honestly. Proximity to a major city?
Yeah, I mean Norman's a suburb. They would hate it if you said that to them, but like
you said it.
You've driven through Norman on 35.
Yeah.
Like, where does Oklahoma City end and Norman begin?
It's a fair question.
What is? Yeah, I know there's more to it than what's just on the side of the road, but like Manhattan is a college town, Norman is a suburb. Now I know because I grew up in a suburb. I know all things suburb. I get it.
But no, like that's how you build a brand is you win. You win a lot. You win on national television. You have players that are instantly recognizable by any college football fan, or college basketball fan. You have stars. You have star-making performances, and you keep doing it year in, year out. You keep showing up, and Kansas State's going to be in position to do that. They've got the right guys at the helm of the right sports, and clearly the right guy overseeing all of it right now, and putting the entire athletic department in the position to grow.
Let's get to a timeout here on 580 Sports Talk. When we come back on the other side of the break, we've got our first What Is Wrong With You of the week. That's coming up on 580 WIBW.
Are you in the market for a new
It's time for the first What Is Wrong With You of the week here on 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan. Two new stories going head-to-head. We had to make a quick change right at the top of the show because Dan and I were alerted to a news story from not too far, Franklin County, that is so funny it had to be involved in the show.
It's too good, and we could not resist its inclusion in What Is Wrong With You today.
Let's do that one second.
Okay.
We'll build up to that one.
All right. Sounds good.
It's really good. My story today is something we've heard before. This one's a little bit extreme. We're going to Florida, where an umpire during a high school baseball game was chastising and reprimanding a player. Well, that player's dad didn't take too kindly to that. So what did he do? He walked on the field and punched the 63-year-old disabled veteran umpire and knocked him on the ground.
Oh, my God.
A father has been charged after punching a 63-year-old umpire during a high school baseball game. During a game on April 18th at Liberty High in Kissimmee, so that's right by Disney in Orlando, the father of a player approached the umpire, a disabled veteran, and knocked him out after an argument between the official and a player, according to Osceola County Sheriff Marcos Lopez. The sucker punch and the umpire's fall were recorded by surveillance video released by the sheriff's office. People quickly rushed to the spot, with one upset player even throwing his helmet as the alleged attacker walked away. Jorge Gonzalez, 41 years old, faces charges of battery on a sports official. That is an extremely specific law. And disruption of a school function, according to an arrest warrant. Gonzalez left the area after he punched the umpire and was arrested Wednesday, more than 2 weeks after the game. He was held on $1,500 bail and was told not to attend any more games. Earlier in the game, umpire Reynaldo Mora had issued an unsportsmanlike conduct warning to the man's son. The ump said of Gonzalez, quote, "I don't know him. I don't even know his face." CNN has reached out to Gonzalez and to the school. It was not immediately known if the man has an attorney. Gonzalez said during his arrest, he was defending his kid and, according to the sheriff, showed no remorse. Well, according to CNN, this was not Gonzalez's first time causing a disruption at a game, though his actions had never reached this level. Quote, "You need to teach your kids how to conduct themselves in society, not be disruptive or violent, especially at any type of events like this."
Unbelievable that he would say he was defending his kid. Like, his kid wasn't in danger. He's just being a jerk on the field. The umpire told him so. By the way, it doesn't sound like that apple fell very far from the tree.
No. That seems like behavior you learn at home.
Defending your kid. Give me a break. Like, this is why we have an officiating shortage all over the country. And look, I understand. Look, when you're competitive, sometimes, in the heat of the moment, you can get frustrated and you yell. And we've all had moments like that I'm sure do not rank among our proudest moments. The only home game my brother played in college that I ever got to go to, I got a warning from the base umpire half an inning in.
Hell yeah.
I was told that umpire was A, notoriously bad, and B, notoriously rabbit-eared after the fact. I wish I would have known he had the rabbit ears before I told him, hey, flip a coin next time.
Oof. That's pretty good, though.
Yeah.
That's pretty good line.
Pretty harmless, right? Like, I'm not impugning, and I'm certainly not out there punching him in the face. But this is why we can't get people to officiate games, because y'all go too far.
You may be a parent of a high school athlete or junior high athlete, elementary school, away from school sports, whatever. This is not a comment specifically about any one person. Well, it is about this guy. But if you've ever been an official or you've ever been a broadcaster at a game, which I know you and I, among others, certainly have, a lot of the biggest problems arise at games regarding behavior because not of the officials directly, not of the players, not of the coaches, because of the people in the crowd. They say things they shouldn't be saying, making insults, yelling. It's often parents of players because their kid can't do anything wrong. No, my kid would never. You're going to reprimand my kid? No, you're in the wrong. And then they say horrible things. Again, I'm not pointing out anybody specifically, but if you've been to a high school sporting event, you have heard those parents or fans or relatives or whoever. Calm the hell down. You do not need to punch this man in the face, a 63-year-old guy. Come on. What are you doing? Absolutely, what are you doing? This guy sucks.
Yeah.
100%. And I'm glad he went to jail.
Yes, 100%. Like, a 63-year-old disabled guy just trying to help the community out. Just trying to be there for his community. Like, he hasn't done enough.
Yeah, right?
For his country and for his community.
Take him this afternoon to do high school baseball umpiring, and you're going to go punch him in the face.
Yeah, human garbage, 100%. Much lighter note for my story today, we go to Franklin County, Kansas, where police pulled somebody over on suspicion of drunk driving. Now, I don't know if that's something an officer can observe and pull you over for, or if that's something that needs to be called in. That happened to me once.
Really?
I was pulled over on I-80. I was living in Nebraska. It was early in the morning. I was trying to get to Kearney for a press conference. Kearney, and where I live, North Platte, was about 100 miles away.
Mm-hmm.
I took the company vehicle, and I had to take the backup company vehicle, and it pulled.
Oh, yeah.
It was really hard to drive, and I was tired because I was young and didn't get enough sleep the night before.
Yeah.
And so I was fading in and out, driving this 9:30, and the police officer pulled me over, and I pulled over, and he said, hey, just was a little concerned about your driving. I told him I was tired and that my exit was 5 miles away. He says, yeah, I don't smell any alcohol on you. Just be careful and maybe drink a soda or coffee when you get to your next stop. he was cool about it, but like I understand that this can happen, and something can happen to you if you're not drunk, obviously, because I was not inebriated or in any state of inebriation, not 10 o'clock in the morning. Anyhow, this was not one of those cases apparently, because this gentleman was in fact intoxicated. Perhaps he was arrested on suspicion of driving under the influence of alcohol, and one of the things that heightened their suspicion was the fact that he was dressed like a can of Bud Light. He was wearing a Bud Light can costume while driving. This is broad daylight too. He was headed north.
Funny.
He was headed northbound on I-35, just southwest of the Kansas City metro area. And the Franklin County Sheriff's Office did post a dash cam photo of the traffic stop with the deputy and the driver standing on the side of the road. The can of beer has his arms outstretched. We can assume it's a he. The face is obscured. They're wearing a backwards cap. And yeah, Bud Light costume.
And what appears to be
to
Crocs,
knee.
by the way. I believe those are Crocs.
Are those
on his
Crocs?
feet. Yeah.
So, yeah, he was arrested on suspicion of driving under the influence of alcohol and taken to county jail.
So, someone in the Facebook post that was shared of this said, "Is this considered an open container?" And someone replied, "Only if his fly is down." This is really funny. Okay, first, the not funny part, don't drive drunk. It's stupid, it's selfish, it's dangerous, you could kill someone, don't ever drive drunk. This is the funniest DUI story we've ever had, I think.
Easily.
Just dressed like...
He dressed like a can of Bud Light, a little too on the nose.
Like, if you're the police officer, you've got to think, am I being pranked?
Right.
Like, is this a joke?
Right?
Like, Davidson, you up there? Like, what are you doing? These guys from the precinct, what's going on here?
Like something from Super Troopers.
Right.
Pulled over a guy dressed like a beer can.
Can you imagine driving past this, too? This is tremendous.
Seeing the guy in the beer can suit,
Yeah.
like driving by them. What's going on there? Now, do you think, like, was he going to a costume party? Was he coming home from a party that got a little out of hand? Why? I would think that suit would be uncomfortable as hell. Like, you don't want to drive in that?
Dude, it's been hot the last few days. We cracked 90 for the first time the other day.
It was 98 here on Saturday.
Like, I would be soaked. And I'm not even a sweaty guy, but if I had this on and he's got a t-shirt under it, I would be dripping in sweat. I would never drive in that. Also, it's like off the seat behind your knees. Ugh, that sounds terrible. Terrible.
Why wouldn't you just take it off? Unless, like, again,
don't know.
You were drunk and you thought it was funny. Like, I'm going to show up in this beer can costume. They're going to think this is hilarious. Whoever they are, and they didn't get to see him. Whoever he was going to see, he didn't get there.
No, this wins. Again, do not ever drive drunk, but he's dressed. Do you think it was Bud Light that he got drunk on? Like, if it was a Cinco de Mayo thing, I'd imagine it was, maybe a more festive
Modelo, perhaps, or
Corona.
Quick power ranking of the Mexican beers. Modelo, number one with a bullet. Didn't used to be my number one, but then I went down to Mexico and I drank it, and I drank a lot of it, and it's really good in Mexico. So Modelo, number one for me, followed by Sol, followed by Pacifico, followed by Corona. Now, you know what? Swap Pacifico and Sol, actually. Let's do that. Yeah. Modelo.
Okay.
No, and I got to put Dos Equis on there. Let's give it an even 5. Go Modelo, Dos Equis, Pacifico, Sol, Corona. That's the definitive top 5 Mexican beer rankings.
Have you ever had Tecate?
I really haven't had a lot of Tecate.
Yeah, I forgot it was a thing until I just Googled popular Mexican beers.
I did too. I've ranked the 5 I've drank.
Fair enough. That one's for you today,
yes,
too.
Absolutely. The beer can drunk driver. Yes.
Shout out to the Kansas Information Network News, because otherwise we were not going to have heard of that story. And wow, that is a banger.
Yeah, what a pity it would have been to miss out on that.
Want to remind you guys that What Is Wrong With You is brought to you by Top City Metal Supply, who cuts the metal you need to your specifications, which saves your time, your money, and material. Never settle when it comes to metal. Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard is halfway between Frito-Lay and Forbes Field. Let's get to a break. There are a handful of pretty well-known NFL free agents still out there. Do any make sense for the Chiefs? We'll discuss next on 580 Sports Talk. 6:43 on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan here with you up until 6 o'clock, when we will send things over to the Royals Radio Network as we get ready for Royals and White Sox tonight. Talk about that series coming up in just a little bit. There are a handful of still available NFL free agents out there. It'll be guys who get one-year deals. Maybe someone sneaks in and gets a 2-year deal where it's essentially one and an option, but most of these guys are going to be getting one-year deals. Now, Matt Verderame earlier on said he doesn't think the Chiefs are going to add anybody. At least it's not likely the Chiefs add anybody who's a real name at this point. Anywhere from 47 to 50 guys on the roster already probably nailed on. Going through the list, and I mean, we can't show you what this list looks like, but of the guys who are still out there, and some are, some legitimate names, are there any players who you think the Chiefs might be interested in taking a look at? Or even if it's not a specific player, because we can get to that afterward, are there any positions that you look at right now and think, maybe the Chiefs don't need another contributor, but having a veteran voice in the room might help?
Can never have too many edge rushers.
Mm-hmm.
That's the place I go first. Last year they were in much more dire straits after the draft when it came to the edge position. It still felt like they hadn't quite addressed it enough. And then they added Carlos Dunlap fairly late in the game in the offseason. He made it to training camp. He was there for all of training camp. I don't believe they signed him during camp, but it was a pre-camp addition to that group, and he ended up being pretty valuable. This year feels like they've got a little bit more depth on hand with the signing of Charles Omenihu, with the drafting of Felix Anudike-Uzomah to go along with the guys who are already there. Mike Dana has proven he's an NFL player. George Karlaftis has proven he's an NFL player. Did you see Chris Jones's tweet earlier today?
I did see Chris Jones's tweet.
Chris Jones, who likes to tweet quite a bit, probably above average poster when it comes to professional athletes. He tweeted at his old running buddy, Frank Clark, and said, "Let's finish the job," and then tagged the Chiefs official handle in the tweet. I don't know what that means. Maybe it doesn't mean anything.
Can you imagine
if they brought back Frank Clark?
After all the hand-wringing and all the, we got to get rid of him, he sucks, he's good in the playoffs, but he sucks otherwise, bad deal, all that, and then they release him only to then bring him back. Well, it'd be very funny. I don't hate it.
Like, the rumor mill doesn't turn in the NFL like it does in other sports, where you have the whole, hey, this player, I mean, it turns for some guys, but not for most guys. Where you hear, hey, player X has heard from, 6 different teams, or this team has checked in. Like, the baseball hot stove kind of operates like that. Like, Reds have kicked the tires on Cody Bellinger. No deal appears imminent. You don't hear as much of that with the NFL.
That's now the transfer portal in specifically college basketball. You hear that all the time.
But you don't get that with the NFL. So I don't think it's symbolic of anything that we haven't heard, or it hasn't been public, that Frank Clark is getting free agent interest from this team or that team, or has taken a visit, or has spoken with this coach or this GM or whatever. But we also haven't heard any of that. And maybe there's a feeling that Frank Clark is free agent because he wanted to get paid. Not because he wanted to leave the Chiefs so much, but because he wanted the opportunity to try and hit for one more lick, make one more decent-sized payday before he started taking the kind of veteran deals that you see the Carlos Dunlaps of the world take when they reach a certain stage of their career. And maybe that deal's not out there for Frank Clark. And maybe if he's going to take a veteran deal, if he's, I don't, like, they have a vet minimum, but guys like Frank Clark don't sign for that.
No.
But if he's going to take a vet deal, a cheaper deal, wouldn't he rather be in Kansas City than anywhere else? Like, wouldn't that, I mean, if he's willing to play for a more amenable salary, wouldn't it make sense for a reunion? Because I think he means a lot to guys in that locker room. I think that
his teammates love him.
Yeah, there's a presence that he has. And I think if we learned anything from the NFC champions that year, it's that you can never have too many playable bodies on the defensive line.
It would be a little bit of a Moustakis-y situation, right?
Yes,
Like,
very much so.
You played out the string, you had your successes, you had, the adulation, you got to go through all of that.
Go get the free agent deal, and then the market just doesn't materialize. Well, that was about like collusion.
Well,
more so than it was about Moustakis like declining as a player at that point. In fact, he had some really good years ahead of him, as it turned out. One of them was half a year in Kansas City because they said, okay, hey, we'll bring you back on a 1-year deal, and hopefully you can play your way into being valuable in trade.
Yeah.
So the Royals got to do the thing that they probably should have done with all those guys in the middle of 2017, or some would say even in the middle of 2016, which I think would have been crazy. But this is not a Royals segment. This is the Chiefs an NFL segment. But yeah, it is. There's some parallels there. You cast them into the wild and say, go free, go be free, and then they come right back.
The question I would have about Clark is he willing to be flexible with his role? And I'm not saying he's not, or he wouldn't be. But if you look at the Chiefs group at defensive end right now, and we're talking about guys who are going to play, like I'm not going to include Josh Kando. And as much as I like
Herring,
I loved Herring as a UDFA, but he's played like 2 games he's been active for. So you've got DK Uzama, Dana, Karlaftis. You signed Omenahu to a 2-year deal. You also drafted BJ Thompson. There's 5 edge rushers for you already. What is Clark willing to do? Because I don't think he starts with that group. I think day one this year, as it's constructed, your starting defensive ends are Charles Omenahu and George Karlaftis.
I think you're right.
Is Frank Clark willing to have a specialized role? Is he, he probably comes in and is immediately the best run defender from that group. He's always been a great run defender.
And Karlaftis talked a lot last year about how important Frank Clark was in his development. Could he be similarly impactful to the development of Felix Anudike-Uzomah? I think so. Like, I think there's value in him if he's willing to be, DE 4 or 5 and fill a mentorship role. If he's willing to do that, then it's worth exploring. It's just surprising, but then again, if you enter free agency thinking, all right, I'm gonna one last big score, and then it doesn't materialize for you, then maybe your priorities change.
And 2, he's going to turn 30 later this summer. This was probably the last best chance to get that.
Oh, absolutely.
I would guess.
Yeah.
I wanted to take a look at his snap counts recently. They've dipped a little bit, but not a huge amount. In fact, the Chiefs played a ton more snaps this year than they did the year before. He played 69% of the snaps.
Nice.
Down from 72% the year before, but he actually played more overall. The Chiefs just played far more defensive snaps. He also played 1 more game than he did the year before in 2021, 15 versus 14. I mean, if he's willing to have a true reserve role, I'm not opposed to it. I just don't know that he would be. Like you said, everybody needs edge rushers. It's not just the Chiefs who could say, yeah, we can use more depth there. I think the other thing you weigh if you're the Chiefs at that specific position is, do you want Frank Clark's skill set back in the room versus what maybe someone else could offer you? Because you're probably not getting a massive amount of true pass rush with him, especially if he's your 4th defensive end. Just as a point of comparison, like Yannick Ngakoue, you're probably not getting a ton of run support if you brought him in. But if you say, hey, Yannick, you're going to be a 3rd down specialist. When it is 3rd and 4 or longer, you're going to rush the quarterback, and that's what you're going to do. Would the Chiefs prefer that kind of skill set if it's going to be in a reserve role? I don't know. I have no idea. I can see the argument. I can see why he and Chris Jones are super tight. I can see it. I just don't know if it makes sense for all parties beyond an emotional level. And maybe that's enough. I don't know. Matt was right when we've talked about this before. It is a bad year for free agency. Next year's not great, but it's a little bit better. But like looking at the best players available right now who are not like unhealthy.
Yannick Ngakoue is somebody Matt brought up, and I think he can still be an impactful edge rusher.
I think so.
But it's a lot of other guys on that list who are way more famous anymore than they are good.
You know who a great example of that is?
Ezekiel Elliott.
Ezekiel Elliott.
He is the example of that.
Yeah.
Do you think he's done? Do you think he's not? Do you think he gets a contract?
Yeah, I do, because he's still a really good pass protector. So someone will bring him in to serve that role.
Yeah, but like, it's great to be a good pass protector, but you got to have some juice in the receiving game if you're going to be, somebody's third down back. And I don't think he has that.
Just no explosion at all.
Like, I'm not anti Ezekiel Elliott. Like, I got nothing against him, but I don't know. I don't know if there's. I
don't know either. I'm with you.
What is his role on a good team?
On a good team,
he's probably better off waiting to see if somebody gets hurt or holds out.
Yeah, that might be true. And just swoop in and be, backup running back somewhere. I don't know. It was always a bad idea to give him as much money as they did, and probably to draft him. What was it, 4th overall?
Yeah, I think
or no,
number...
5th overall.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it ended up being. But man, he fell off a cliff. I mean, he was a good player for several years, but man, he fell off a cliff completely.
Yeah, he did.
After that group, like Bradley Roby, does Ronald Darby have anything left in the tank? Like, that's what you're looking at
the
this
graveyard of Denver Bronco cornerbacks.
Can I interest you in Kenny Golladay?
No.
Can I interest an XFL team in Kenny Golladay? Maybe the USFL. They're playing right now. By the way, I watched a hot minute. I watched most of the first half of Pittsburgh versus Birmingham yesterday. They played the game in Canton, Ohio. You could have taken everybody who was at that game and not filled our 2 studios. It was empty.
The rebirth of the USFL makes a lot more sense if you think about it in the context of what else is on network television. Like Law and Order got rebooted. Night Court got rebooted. What's the other one? Hawaii Five-0 got rebooted. It's 80s nostalgia, except as a professional sports league.
It also doesn't really make sense to have teams like represent specific cities and then not ever play in those cities. Like, why are Pittsburgh and Birmingham playing in Canton?
It's part of the 3-year plan. You got to trust it.
Yeah. Maybe Tom Dundon will go buy this league too. No, I'm not over it yet. We've got to get to a break for the news. We'll come back. We've got a ton of 580 Sports Talk headlines coming up on 580 WIBW. 1 hour to go on 580 Sports Talk on this Monday, May 8th. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He's Dan Lucero. We are here with you until the top of the 6 o'clock hour, when we'll send it to Royals baseball. Royals White Sox, a battle for the basement in the AL Central. Oh, man, isn't that just peachy? We'll preview that series coming up here in just a little bit. We've got a busy 5 o'clock hour coming your way with a ton of 580 Sports Talk headlines, including our playoff roundup, news from around the Big 12. Remember the Alabama gambling story, Alabama baseball? Guess what?
We got another one.
Yeah, we got a lot in that department today. Tons of headlines to get to. Again, our Royals preview and more all coming up this hour. We'd love for you to be a part of the show. Hit us up on the text line, 785-272-9429. Same number as our Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline. And you can also jump into the comment section on YouTube. Our channel is called Sports on 580 WIBW. Go subscribe to it if you haven't already. It's the best way to find all of our video content, and it's so easy to find. YouTube.com, go to the search bar, just type in Sports on 580. Will be the first result. Click on us, subscribe, and boom, you are all set to go. Let's jump right in, Dan, because we've got a boatload of 580 Sports Talk headlines to get to today. And I'm going to start with one that may have some major ramifications for Big 12 basketball. Bob Huggins, the longtime head coach of West Virginia basketball, who was also a former coach at the University of Cincinnati, which is now this year joining the Big 12. He went on a radio show in Cincinnati on WLW, which is a
big AM stick.
Yeah.
Longtime home of the Cincinnati Reds, 700, I believe, on the AM dial.
Yeah.
Pretty big stick. The guy who was on with Bob Cunningham is like an institution in Cincinnati.
He's been around for forever. I saw Stuart Mandel phrase it as, I heard Bill Cunningham when I was a kid. I am now 47 years old. Bill Cunningham is 75. He's been around for a while.
Yeah.
And some of the I didn't know anything about this guy. I've heard the name, just knowing the radio business. I didn't know anything about the guy. Hearing some of the commentary during the clips that have gone viral today, I now understand what kind of show he hosts. Fine, so be it. It's not sports talk, but they bring up some sports stuff.
It's guy radio.
Yeah, locker room talk. Yeah, that kind of stuff. So they had Bob Huggins on today. I guess they were sharing stories of Huggy Bear's time in Cincinnati, at Cincinnati, and they bring him in. And Huggins, after making a couple jokes with guys who are apparently his friends, references a time when at the Xavier versus Cincinnati game one year, with big rivalry.
Crosstown shootout. It is a huge deal.
Yeah. Very underrated, I think, in terms of college basketball rivalries.
Oh, yeah.
Very heated.
It gave us the phrase zip them up.
Yeah.
I will always love the crosstown shootout for that.
What was his name? Yancey Gates?
Yeah, Yancey Gates. Tu Holloway was the one who said
Tu Holloway.
He was the one who said zip them up.
Yep. Great rivalry. Well, apparently one year, some Xavier fans brought some phallic shaped novelty toys to a game, and threw them on the floor. I don't remember that happening. Apparently it did.
I don't either, but yeah, very real chance this is before your time and maybe even before mine.
And Xavier being the private Catholic school, Cincinnati being the public university, and Bob Huggins coaching at the latter, referred to that event and then described Xavier fans as Catholic, and then used a 4-letter word, plural, beginning with F, that is wildly homophobic. And anywhere you go in society today, that word is frowned upon.
Yeah.
There was probably a time, probably before my time, to be honest with you, when you could say that, and it was never appropriate, but you could, people talked differently. I think pretty much everyone on earth knows at this point, you say that if you're intending to hurt someone.
And if Bob Huggins isn't familiar with the ramifications of saying that word, he could have asked his very good friend, Tom Brenneman, who blew up his career when he got caught on a hot mic saying that exact same word.
Tom Brenneman,
also a Cincinnati guy, for what it's worth.
For what it's worth, yeah. Tom Brenneman, who recently spoke at West Virginia as a guest of Bob Huggins.
As a guest of Bob Huggins.
So, yeah, Bob Huggins referred to the fans of Xavier University as Catholic bleeps. It's a gross word. It is really, really gross.
Yep, and not like there was A, no backtracking. B, he said the slur twice. He said it and then threw the Catholic part in front of it. Like, oh, just to make extra sure you understand who I'm referring to and what it is that I'm talking about.
See, and that to me, and I'm not going to compare slurs. I'm not going to do that. But like, you could have made the argument, and Glenn Kuiper has, the play-by-play voice of the A's or TV voice of the A's, who said a horrific anti-black slur when trying to talk about what we thought was trying to talk about the Negro Leagues Museum this weekend. He has since been suspended by that team. You could argue that he argued that it slipped out. I don't buy it, but he argued that. Bob Huggins said this word twice.
Yeah.
He went back to make sure that point was made. That's not what would possess you to say that. Like, even if you really feel that in your heart, why would you think I'm going to say this? That doesn't make any amount of sense to me, one bit.
Say it in, like, it's bad enough to say it in private among your buddies. Like, it's not a word you need to have in your vocabulary. That word hurts people. There are a lot of words out there that you can use that are disparaging, but also less hurtful and less of a slur, and use those. And don't use the words that hurt people. But it's one thing if they're having like a private moment over some beers, and he says it, and it's just for their consumption. And it's like, yeah, it's not cool to say that, but that's one thing. You said it on a very powerful AM signal on a very well-known radio program. Twice. He doubled down.
It's unbelievable. Both Huggins and West Virginia have released statements. Huggins is, earlier today I said this. I apologize to Xavier in Cincinnati and West Virginia, and I
offer no excuses. I have to be better. The boilerplate.
I fully accept any punishment coming my way. I'm ashamed and embarrassed, etc. Okay.
And he should be. He should be 100%.
West Virginia Athletics has also released a statement. Coach Huggins' remarks today on a Cincinnati radio show were insensitive, offensive, and do not represent our university values. Coach Huggins has since apologized. West Virginia University does not condone the use of such language and takes such actions very seriously. The situation is under review and will be addressed by the university and its athletic department. I mean, bare minimum, you've got to suspend him for this. And honestly, I don't think anyone would be shocked if that was it for Bob Huggins. This goes beyond crass. This is truly intended to hurt people. And what are you doing? I know that's kind of Bob Huggins' thing, is he shoots from the hip and that's just Huggins being Huggins. But
yeah, and it has made him one of the more enjoyable, I would even venture to say likable characters in college basketball over his time.
But that's one thing when you're saying John Higgins missed a call and it screwed you over at Allen Fieldhouse, and you say, well, we played 8-on-5, and go ask Keith Kimball about that. That's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is gross.
Yeah, this is indecent. It's indecent, and it's hateful, and it's not language that belongs in polite society. And he should be ready for any and all punishment, including if West Virginia wanted to fire him for this, they absolutely could, and it wouldn't surprise me if they did.
If you're a West Virginia fan, you've got to be fuming right now, because you've got maybe the best transfer class in the country with multiple Power 5 starters coming in. You're going to contend for a Big 12 title next year, and your coach does this? I would be beside myself, absolutely beside myself. But that's the latest on Bob Huggins. Yikes. That could get real ugly really quickly.
Yeah, real bad. And again, just the lesson here is some words that hurt people, and you don't need to have in your vocabulary. Whether you're joking around with your buddies or whether you're on live radio, there's some words you don't need to have as part of your vocabulary. Use different words. Use better words. Be better. It's not hard to ask. It's 2023. This isn't new.
Yeah, you know what's acceptable. You know.
First headline for me. Who's ready for another gambling scandal?
Buddy, I'm ready for a couple of gambling scandals here.
Yeah, it kind of feels like we have dueling gambling scandals. The two athletic departments.
Rivalry renewed.
Yes, two athletic departments in the same state who would love nothing more than to one-up each other, but probably not in this way. We'll start with the Iowa story, and then we'll get to the Iowa State part of it, and then we'll double back to the Iowa part of it. So the Iowa Gaming Commission, sports gambling legalized in Iowa, I want to say after Kansas? Did they get it after us?
No, they were several years ahead of us.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
they were.
I have it backwards.
2019.
Okay.
Yeah, they've had it for a long time.
I have it backwards. I'm thinking of a different state that just got it in the Midwest, and that's my fault. Anyway.
Maybe Ohio.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. Ohio just got it. Ohio. You see how that happened. Anyway, the Iowa Gaming Commission confirmed on Monday it is investigating Iowa athletics after the university announced on Friday that it withheld athletes from competition due to a potential NCAA violation. The statement from the Iowa Gaming Commission says that they are unable to comment further and that they are continuing to monitor the situation and will provide any additional information when able. This starts, again, weirdly, with college baseball. We said our piece on this when the Alabama head coach got fired. Alabama head baseball coach got fired last week. But, like, man, if you're betting on college baseball with regularity, like, there are phone numbers that you can call to get some help. Anyway, Iowa released a statement on Friday saying they had withheld some student athletes from competition due to a potential NCAA violation because there were 4 players on their top 25 ranked, by the way, college baseball team who did not play in the weekend series against Ohio State, including one of their most commonly used relief pitchers and their team leader in OPS. So it wasn't like, oh, they're just holding out some jokers. Like, these really good players that were tied up in this. So a spokesperson for the NCAA has told ESPN that due to confidentiality rules put in place by NCAA member schools, the NCAA does not comment on current, pending, or potential investigations. So that's the start of the Iowa part. Then, earlier today, in fact, within the last hour, Iowa State University released this statement. Iowa State University and its Department of Intercollegiate Athletics is aware of online sports wagering allegations involving approximately 15 of our active student athletes from the sports of football, wrestling, and track and field in violation of NCAA rules. The university has notified the NCAA and will take the appropriate actions to resolve those issues. That's the Iowa State investigation. Now, within the last half an hour, Iowa has released some more details. And as part of their investigation, there are 26 current student athletes from the University of Iowa from baseball, football, men's basketball, men's track and field, wrestling, and one full-time employee of the university's athletics department. It does not include any current or former coaches. Again, this is Scott Docterman, who covers Iowa football for The Athletic, reporting that. So, you got a lot of athletes tied up in stuff they shouldn't be tied up with, and there are going to be some ramifications for this. We have talked about how there is less temptation for professional athletes to try and turn a quick buck by throwing a game or fixing a game because they make obscene amounts of money. No, it doesn't make obscene amounts of money. College baseball players.
Nope.
College wrestlers.
Nope.
Like, there's some NIL money here and there, but that doesn't compare to, hey, you could make a lot of money if you bet on yourself to lose, and then you go and you make that happen. Because it's a hell of a lot easier to lose on purpose than it is to win on purpose. And that's the only thing you can assume. Like, but at the same time, that's the dark potential of this story. The other potential of this story is that, and I am not entirely clear what the NCAA rule is on student athletes betting on other sports.
I had the same thought.
If they regulate it in the same way, or if it's a state by state, or if it's a university by university. Because, like, the NFL says you can't bet on the NFL. Even if you don't play for the Titans, you can't bet on a Titans-Jaguars game. You can't bet on the NFL if you're an employee of the NFL. But you want to bet on the NBA, you want to bet on college basketball, you want to bet on hockey, be our guest. You just can't do it at the team facility. Those are the rules in the NFL. I am not as well-versed on what the rule is in the NCAA. But if there is a rule that says you can't gamble on sports, and these kids are gambling on sports in violation of the rule, and they think they can get away with it because it's on their phones, they're dumber than 10 dogs.
Yeah, and, we said this for the Alabama scandal, too. This is proof the system is working.
Yes.
Now, are some people going to say this is an issue because a lot of kids or players or athletes or adults or whoever are getting wrapped up in it and are breaking these rules, that's a different discussion. But in terms of, oh my God, the humanity, no, this is working. This is a good thing. The books are supposed to catch this. The authorities, quote unquote, are supposed to be catching these things. So they're actually getting it right. The system is working in that regard. I don't know if in college athletics, I really have no idea that they tell their kids, hey, you cannot do this. Like, I don't know if when Kansas legalized it last year, if Lance Leipold and Chris Klieman and Bill Self and Jerome Tang or, Travis Goff and Gene Taylor, I don't know if those guys told their athletes, hey, look, you can do it in these instances or you cannot do it in these other instances.
So
as far as just to finish the thought.
Yeah.
Do we know what sports these athletes were gambling on? Like if you were if you're an Iowa football player and you tried to place a bet on Iowa football, I'm going to leave the Brian Ferentz jokes out here for a second. Like, that is clearly a problem.
Going to the sideline and betting next possession, punt. Didn't you hammer that during a game last year?
Yes. It was free money. This drive will not end in points.
So the NCAA's official website has a whole page regarding sports wagering. NCAA rules prohibit participation in sports wagering activities and from providing information to individuals involved in or associated with any type of sports wagering activities concerning intercollegiate, amateur, or professional athletics competition. That sure reads like zero tolerance, doesn't it?
Yep.
That sure reads like you can't do it. So
you don't do it. Like, I know it's easy for me to say.
Yeah.
Like
there's a whole poster here. Don't risk this. If you risk something, it's a bet. No sports wagers of any kind.
Yeah, then again, I don't know what these athletic departments have done to reinstill that. I don't know if it's like the NFL where in every locker room, in every, training room, it says don't do this. I don't know.
Compliance, like you have a meeting with compliance before every sports season. You talk to your NCAA compliance. This is true in Division III. Yeah. Never mind Division I. And you hear from compliance about what you have to do to stay eligible, to stay on the field. And I got to imagine this is in all caps. You can't gamble. You can't do it.
Yep.
And I'm sure, like, the thought process is, well, it's just a little sprinkle on the Laker game on my phone. They'll never find out. Yeah, they will.
Yes, they absolutely will.
Yeah, they will. Your name is on it.
And it's working. They are getting it right.
Yes, like enforcement and regulation, like A+.
Yeah.
A+ all the way around if we're catching people in this. And look, with the proliferation of sports gambling, there's always going to be a cautionary tale. And it looks like there are going to be several cautionary tales at the state institutions at the University of Iowa and Iowa State University.
I love that. Cy-Hawk rivalry runs deep. Phenomenal stuff. I assume within the next year-ish, we'll hear more about this. We'll hear more of athletes who are doing it or, coaches who are getting involved in stuff who get caught. And eventually over time, it will taper off because everyone will come to know without even having to be told, I cannot do this in this position.
There will probably be some athletes right now who are shook, who are realizing, oh, wait a minute, I can't gamble at all. Like they know if I do it on my phone.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
You might have to self-report.
Yeah, you might have to. That is, I'd probably rather self-report, not get kicked off the team.
Yeah.
Be like, hey, I made a mistake. Yeah, that is, again, the system's working, but yeah, bad look for Iowa and for Iowa State for sure. Continuing on with our 580 Sports Talk headlines, we've got some local basketball coaching news, some big news today. 2 city programs are now looking for new head coaches. The surprise of the day, at least, first surprise I saw today, is that Dwayne Paul has stepped down as the head coach of Hayden boys basketball. He is going to take the head job at Free State in Lawrence. That job for 1 year was held by KU great Sharon Collins. They went 11-10. He stepped down. He is going to take a coaching job in KC Mo in the Metro itself.
So, Oak Hill or Park Hill?
Oak Hill. Oak Park.
Oak Park.
That's what it is. Oak Park. Yeah, that's a good job. That's a very good job for Sharon. So Dwayne Paul is stepping down at Hayden after 2 seasons and a trip to the state tournament and a sub-state finals appearance this year. He's going to go take over at Free State. So that is going from, I believe it was Lebo to Hayden to one of the better 6A athletic programs in the state, all in the span of 4 years. That's a pretty meteoric rise for the former Murray State racer. And that means Hayden, for the second time in just a couple of years, is looking for a head boys basketball coach.
Yeah, there's been a lot of turnover. The basketball coaching positions
really has
at Hayden in recent years. Carville Reynoldsson has stabilized things with that girls basketball program, done a fine job. And hopefully Hayden can find a coach who, I don't blame Dwayne Paul, and certainly don't think that Hayden knew he was going to leave after just 2 years, but hopefully they can find some similar stability on the boys' side.
Yes, absolutely true. I loved talking to Dwayne Paul because this is a guy who played professional basketball, not at the NBA level, but played some professional ball. He played Division I basketball, was a coach at the Division I and Division II levels. That dude knew ball as well as anybody I've ever talked to, and it was awesome to hear him talk about it. So Free State got a good one for sure, and I know Hayden's going to land someone good. They landed Dwayne Paul last time. That was a darn good hire after Torrey Head stepped down. Also, Topeka West's girls coming off their best record in quite some time, their first 6-win season in quite a while. Their head coach, Jeff Scarr, stepped down today after 3 years at the helm of the program. He had previously been an assistant for Ben Meskey and then took over the team. Not Ben.
David
Meskey. Thank you.
Yes. That was his father.
Yes. And speaking of Hayden basketball. And so Jeff Scarr stepping down after 3 years. Topeka West will be looking for a new coach. And I have the number here. Best record in 15 seasons for the Topeka West girls. They're going to have a few contributors returning for next year. They did have a fairly big senior class, if I remember correctly. So the Topeka West girls and the Hayden boys will be looking for new coaches come the 23-24 seasons.
Next up on our 5A Sports Talk headlines, it's about that time.
Playoffs?
It's our playoff roundup. We take a look at the latest playoff action in the NBA and the NHL. We'll start in basketball, where both series that took place yesterday are now tied at 2, with the Sixers and Suns holding court on their home courts to level up the series. The Sixers and the Celtics are even at 2. The Suns and the Nuggets are even at 2. Thrilling game 4s yesterday. The Sixers with a win over the Celtics in overtime. As for the second time in the series, the Celtics lose the game because they don't get a shot off at the very end, which is just unbelievable stuff.
Yep.
Like elementary school stuff. And they're not getting the ball up to the rim when they need to get the ball up to the rim.
We've seen that twice in these playoffs. That's how the Bucks got eliminated.
Yeah. That's exactly how the Bucks got eliminated and how Mike Budenholzer lost his job.
Yep.
Nuggets and the Suns, incredible game. That game had everything except for the Suns missing shots, which they just did not. Also, was reported earlier today, Denver star Nikola Jokic will not face suspension for Game 5 after he got tangled up with Suns owner Matt Ishbia in the stands incident in the second quarter. It was all over the internet. I won't rehash it too much. All I can tell you is this. I know Jokic hits harder than that, and I kind of wish he had.
Matt Ishbia, who has owned the Suns for about 8 minutes, gets the loose ball. It rolls out of bounds. He picks it up. He won't let go of it.
Yeah, and Jokic, this is the thing Jokic does. Like, tries to get the ball real quick from an official or from, like, the sideline and get it inbounds if he thinks he can press a numbers advantage. It's something he tries to do a lot. And Ishbia, a former college basketball player, a walk-on at Michigan State, probably his player instincts kicked in, and he thought, no, I'm not going to let him have the ball and just start a fast break. So he holds on to it for a beat and then kind of flings it away from him and then stands up, puts his hands on Jokic, like on his chest, and Jokic kind of just brushes him aside, and then Ishbia flops. Like, he flopped. And he got a technical foul out of it. And that 1 point was kind of significant in what ended up being a 5-point Suns win.
Yeah, just kind of.
Like, Denver did not get a fair whistle in Phoenix. Games 3 and 4, just flat out. I know that sounds like a homer take, and it probably is, but they did not get a fair whistle in those games. And also, like, Devin Booker is eventually not going to shoot 171% from the field in a game.
Probably not.
Like, that
feels like he might.
So that's the bet for the Suns, right? Like, Monty Williams has openly decided, look, we are only going to win this series if we outscore them. We're just going to play guys who shoot. We're not going to worry about whether or not they're defensive liabilities. We just have to score more points than they do. And it has to be somebody other than Booker and Durant at times. Last night it was Landry Shamet of all people hitting corner threes.
KC and Wichita State, great.
Yes. Like, on the one hand, as a Nuggets fan, I'm frustrated. On the other hand, it's probably a good sign that the Suns got superhuman performances from Devin Booker and Kevin Durant in games 3 and 4 and won those games by a combined 12 points. Like,
yeah, I wouldn't be too worried.
If they're anything less than that, Denver probably wins the series still. But we'll see. It was a hell of a game last night. Very entertaining game. So those series are even tonight. The Knicks and the Warriors will try and even up their conference semifinal series. But unlike Philly and Phoenix, both of them will have to do it away from home. The Knicks are in Miami. Will not have Emmanuel Quickly tonight due to an ankle injury. The Warriors are at Los Angeles taking on the Lakers.
One other note about Matt Ishbia, he released a statement today where he's like, I don't think Nikola Jokic should be suspended. Let's just move on and play basketball. Bro, if anyone should get in trouble, it's you.
Yes.
For interfering with the game.
Yes, you don't get to interfere with the game just because you own the team, man. You don't get to do it. What a little wiener.
Nobody has ever acted like a Michigan State walk-on more than the former Michigan State walk-on last night.
Yeah, he clearly attended the Steve Wojciechowski school of irritating tiny white guys flopping for fun and profit.
NHL playoffs last night. The Leafs are done. They're toast.
Maple Leafs.
They're done. It's over.
They're down 3-0 to the 8-seed Panthers, the team that became the Vegas betting favorite to win the Stanley Cup is behind 3 games done in that series. It was an overtime winner for the Florida Panthers in Game 3 last night.
The books always win.
Meanwhile, the Seattle Kraken routed the Dallas Stars, put a 7 spot on them last night in a Game 3 victory. Kraken lead the Stars 2-1. Tonight, just one game on the NHL docket, Game 3 between the Oilers and Golden Knights as the series shifts to Edmonton, tied at 1.
We didn't watch much of the hockey last night, but we did briefly. Abby and I watched it for a few minutes before she got ready for bed. Right at the start of the second period, they scored 2 goals. We thought, wow, Dallas looks awful. She got up to go get ready for bed. They scored again, and I started cackling. She said, wow, they scored again? She walked away, and then they scored again. It had 4 goals in less than 6 minutes to open the second period, and that was the end of that. That's going to do it for our 580 Sports Talk headlines. We'll get to the Kentucky Derby and the Kansas Speedway NASCAR race coming up a little bit later on this hour. We do have to get to a break. When we come back, Royals-White Sox starts tonight. How bad are the vibes going to be? We'll discuss next on 580 Sports Talk.
Yeah, I'm
Brenton and Dan here with you on 580 Sports Talk, 536 on the program. Want to get to a quick correction earlier, which actually makes the Klieman contract at K-State look even better. I was mentioning that I want to see what the money is going to look like for the assistants going forward. You know, what other money is involved in extending Klieman.
Right.
I remembered that the coordinators had gotten deals as kind of, things get fuzzy after time. I actually didn't realize that the entire staff got reworked deals and got pay bumps already this offseason. We had a text from the 316 point that out, and I looked it up and said, oh, shoot, I didn't realize that like Connor Riley and some other guys got raises too. So that assuages any of my worries about that. So, no, K-State is in a great, great spot. Appreciate the text. Those continue to come in on 785-272-9429, our text line number. You can also hit us up in the comment section on YouTube, where our channel is called Sports on 580 WIBW. Royals versus White Sox 4-game series begins tonight. I'm going to tell you this. If the Kansas City Royals sweep this series, they will be out of the basement in the AL Central. That would put them 1 game ahead of the White Sox and would make the Royals 13-26 on the season. That's what we're working with
something
here.
To shoot for, right?
Yeah, sweep a division foe in 4 games. It's weird that you don't play as many divisional games now. I don't like it. I'm opposed to it.
Yeah, in theory, it was like, man, it feels like they play the White Sox every week. And now here we are in May, and they haven't played the White Sox yet. It's just strange.
Same with the Cubs and Cardinals play tonight for the first time all year. Dang, we're in the second week of May, and they're playing for the first time? That just seems wrong. One quick Royals note. The Royals did issue a statement about Ryan Yarbrough. We talked about that earlier on in the show today. He took a line drive right off the face yesterday. Really scary scene. Obviously you never want to see that, but just terrible to see. The Royals did release a tweet today that said, "We're happy to share Ryan is stable and improving and never lost consciousness. He sustained multiple non-displaced fractures, and we do not believe he will need surgery. Underwent more testing today. We will share his progress as we can." Very, very scary, but hopefully the prognosis continues to be good for Ryan Yarbrough. The White Sox, I would argue, have worse vibes than the Royals.
Yeah, they're down pretty bad. I almost feel bad for Pedro Grifol. First managerial opportunity, and this team, their pitching staff is a mess. They're 13th in the American League in earned run average. Bullpen's a disaster. They've cycled through a bunch of guys already. They are at the level of down bad where Hanser Alberto and Billy Hamilton are both on the team.
If you loved the late 2010s Royals and the early 2020s Royals,
it felt like they were teammates. Not the case. Billy Hamilton, a member of the 2019 Royals. Hanser Alberto was on the 2021 team. But spiritually, it's like they were on the same Royals team. I wonder if they'll do a tribute video for Hanser tonight.
God, I hope so.
A tribute video for him. Maybe one for Andrew Benintendi. That's not a joke. They could do one for Benintendi. He was an all-star.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know if he came back with did he come back with the Yankees last year? He might have.
Yeah, I feel like he did. Well, yeah, wasn't his first series against the Royals?
I think you're right.
I think he got traded to the Yankees, then immediately played against the Royals, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but that was in New York.
Oh,
I'm double checking.
Oh, okay.
But that was actually in New York.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right, that makes sense.
Yeah, you do a tribute video for Benintendi tonight. He was an all-star.
Now, the Sox have been a little bit better since they went on that 10-game losing skid when they lost 6 of 7 against the Rays, a loss to the Phillies, and they got swept by the Blue Jays, a series in which they scored 2 runs in 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, though, they've actually been a lot better. They've won 5 of their last 7 and have won 2 of 3 in each of their last 2 series.
They scored 17 runs yesterday against the against the Reds.
Yeah, including an 11-run inning.
Gee, who was pitching for the Reds?
I'm not sure who pitched in that game.
A gentleman named Graham Ashcraft, who's actually good. Like, wow, that's okay. I feel a little differently about the offense for the White Sox after that. Hanser hit a dinger.
He did.
What do I know? 4 for 4 with 4 ribs for Hanser Alberto.
I have some intrigue on the under for tonight.
Okay.
8.5 was the number at which I got it. I don't know if that has changed. I haven't checked. I took that last night.
Dylan Cease on the bump. He's pretty excellent.
Yeah, Dylan Cease is phenomenal. And you get home teams at Greinke.
Yeah, home Greinke.
who has been actually really darn good. The over-under has not changed. It's still 8.5. So I took the under on that because I think home Greinke, who's been very good at home the last 2 seasons, and then Dylan Cease, one of the best starting pitchers in baseball, is going to keep this fairly low scoring. And the Royals bullpen has been good as of late, too. This is the kind of games that in recent years when the Royals by, July have been bad or by June have been bad, you get to August, you get to September, and you think, oh my God, a below 500 White Sox team is coming to town. Who cares? It's an even worse feeling when it's May 8th and you have that vibe. Like,
Right.
God, we got to watch the Royals play the White Sox. We can't even get like a fun bad team. Like, bring the Angels back in. Let's go watch Trout and Ohtani.
Right.
Bring the Yankees in. They're playing terribly too, but at least, White Sox have a good pitcher tonight, but you can watch nasty Nestor Cortez tonight. They'll hit a bunch of home runs probably. They are managed terribly. The Yankees are. But it's just, like there's not a whole lot of intrigue unless you really can convince yourself, hey, we could sweep them and then get to 4th in the division. What other intrigue is there here? You're not even going to get the guys who you probably were most interested in seeing pitch because you're interested in Singer to see if he can finally start stringing some starts together.
He goes Thursday.
Well, I guess he will. 4-game series.
Thursday afternoon, yeah.
But yeah, like after you get an edition of home Greinke tonight, you go back to back to back Jordan Lyles, Brad Keller, Brady Singer. Yeah. That's horrible.
Already dreading Jordan Lyles starts like it's, for me personally, that's a feeling I can relate to. It feels like 2015 all over again.
I know we're talking White Sox Royals. Can I inform you of something very bad? You probably already know this, but something very, very bad.
Yeah.
On Friday, when the Royals begin their weekend set in Milwaukee, they're going to be on national television. I mean, technically national television. They're going to be streaming. They're the Apple TV Plus game.
That's the Apple TV game. Well, hey, if you don't pay for that, then you don't have to watch the Royals that night.
That's true. Listen to us instead on 580 WIBW. That's a national game. That's an exclusive rights to the broadcast game, and it's the Royals.
Hey, the Rockies have already been on Peacock, so it happens.
I woke up way earlier than I thought each of the last 2 Sundays and watched the Peacock game. This week it was actually on NBC.
Yeah, I wondered about that. If that was just the local affiliates doing that, or if the NBC just picked up Braves Orioles and said, let's throw this on national TV.
Yeah, it's pretty nice actually. I woke up, I was like, God, what is on at 11 o'clock? Not that 11 o'clock is early, I understand that, but I wasn't expecting to already think, well, I'm going to throw the TV on for the day.
Well, spoken like somebody who's never experienced the joys of the Eredivisie Dutch soccer match that ESPN Plus will give you on the weekends.
Right. Royals win tonight?
I can't predict a Royals win.
I couldn't do it anyway, but especially not with Dylan Cease on the mound.
Yeah, I think Royals offense is going good, but it's a tall task tonight.
Cease does have a 4.58 ERA for the year, but
he struggled a bit. But
if there's anyone ever to get right against,
right,
it's probably the Royals. Let's get to another timeout. We'll get to some more events from a very busy sports weekend after this on 580 Sports Talk. Final few minutes of 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan here with you. By the way, remember that Chris Jones tweet about Frank Clark we were talking about?
I do.
Guess who just retweeted it?
Seth Kaiser,
Guess where
friend of the program.
Guess where Seth Kaiser saw it? A retweet from Patrick Mahomes. That seems like all the stamp of approval that most Chiefs fans needs to say, you know what? We could bring the Shark back for another year.
Give it another run.
Why not? Why not try that one more time? Other events from the weekend. It was a wild sports weekend. So much going on. We briefly mentioned the NASCAR race at Kansas Speedway. Great finish with, Kyle Larson and Denny Hamlin. Hamlin with just a little nudge at the end. Got Larson loose. Raced past him, took checkered flag. It was very fun.
Win in 33 races, I think, for Hamlin. It had been a while.
Wow. Oh, yeah, it had been a while. It was a very fun ending. I turned it on for the final 5 laps, and I was treated to a great race. And then there was a fight afterwards.
Yeah, Ross Chastain and what's the other
Noah
guy?
Gragson.
Noah Gragson. I was going to call him Seth. That's wrong. Noah Gragson. Yeah, they got into a fight. Chastain appeared to connect with a roundhouse right.
That's pretty cool.
Man, that's just old school racing for you, boys. A little rubbing, a little racing, and a little brawling at the end.
A little fighting. I was joking on Twitter afterward that if you win the race at the Kansas Speedway, you get a gift card to go to the Dave & Buster's.
Only thing missing were the old, the helmet with no shield that the old drivers used to race, so they could drive and have a lit cigarette hanging out of one corner of their mouth. That old school.
It was very old school. Yeah, that was fun. That was a very fun end to that race.
What more could you ask for?
Also, Saturday afternoon, Kentucky Derby.
Yes.
Mage with the win. Great call, as always, by Larry Colmus. Mage!
I tuned in just in time.
Oh, really?
I did. I was in the basement. I was hanging out in the basement after flower planting day, and my wife was over at her sister-in-law's house with the new baby. By the way,
hey, congratulations!
Yeah, I became an uncle a couple weeks ago.
Hey,
that kind of slid by under the radar, but that did happen. I remembered it was almost post time. It was almost 5:78. So I flipped over to NBC and caught the race.
It was a pretty good race, pretty entertaining. Yeah.
Thankfully, no more horses died.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when we talk about why isn't this network saying something? Why aren't the broadcasters saying about this bad thing or whatever? I think a lot of times it's because they're protecting a vested interest they have in this sporting event or this league or whatever. But it was particularly dystopian that there was a horse morgue being built on the track, and NBC's like, hey, isn't this great? Look at these horses. Look at these dresses and hats. Here's Patrick Mahomes. Isn't this fun?
Mahomes is everywhere, man. He's checking all the bucket list boxes.
In back-to-back days, he went from the Kentucky Derby and saying riders up to the Miami Grand Prix for F1.
Wow. Didn't go to Kansas Speedway, but he went to the F1 race.
Yeah.
Huh, interesting.
F1 is the hotness.
I guess. If
you can name an F1 racer, you can probably name one of the 3 racers who ever actually wins.
Right?
Oh, yes. Did Max Verstappen win? Yes, actually, he did.
I know
he wins all of them.
I know Bodass. The Finnish guy, Bodass.
Yeah. I know him because Spencer Hall makes fun of his name.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
That Lewis Hamilton owns the Denver Broncos.
Yeah. Is he still racing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I knew that. I don't think I can name another one.
Nothing else for you.
No, that's
sorry.
That's not for me. Wanted to give you a quick Royals update too. This from Annie Rogers of MLB.com. She tweeted about an hour ago. Sounds like Daniel Lynch is scheduled to make another rehab start with Omaha on Friday. So the Royals will need another starter for the series opener in Milwaukee. Matt Quattrero said the plan is subject to change, though. Lynch threw around 70 pitches yesterday in 3 1/3 innings. Getting closer to Daniel Lynch being able to join the big club. That's good. If for no other reason, it'd be nice for the Royals to just have a little consistency and continuity in the rotation. Just say, okay, we have a 5th starter now.
Yeah.
And it's going to be Daniel Lynch.
Well, I'm excited.
That's where I am.
We obviously, before he got hurt, we saw what adjustments Chris Bubich had made, and I'm hopeful that there might be some adjustments for Daniel Lynch that might prove similarly fruitful and hopefully less damaging to his arm.
Yeah, that'd be nice to not have to go through the injury stuff again. Man, kind of rough injury-wise for the Royals lately.
Yeah.
Which, you want to talk about adding insult to injury.
When it rains, it pours.
It really does. We've got to get to one more commercial break. We'll come back after that and wrap up this edition of 580 Sports Talk with the final word.
Are you in the market for a
Time to wrap up 580 Sports Talk. Don't forget that coming up at the top of the hour, we'll send things to the Royals Radio Network. Royals White Sox tonight. Pregame at 6. First pitch at 6:40 from the K. Zach Greinke on the bump for the Boys in Blue. It'll be Dylan Cease to go for the White Sox in game 1 of their 4-game set. With that, Dan, what is your final word?
They talk about sometimes a property or a house has good bones. Like, the inside might be in rough shape. Maybe it needs a little TLC, new furniture, new carpet, new flooring, but the bones of it are good. Like Maren Morris hit the chart, I think, with a song about that. I think it was her.
Country music insider Dan Lucero.
Yeah, you know me. Some houses have good bones. Some houses don't have good bones. And the house that is Kansas City Royals pitching, I think it is abundantly clear with a month of Brian Sweeney as a pitching coach, there are not a lot of good bones in that particular house that houses Royals pitching. If I got to watch Brad Keller nibble one more time, I'm going to lose my mind. Jordan Lyles stinks. We all knew this. It's very, very frustrating to watch this team on a day-to-day basis because right now, with Brady Singer struggling the way he is, the Royals aren't sending anybody to the mound over a 5-day stretch that makes you think we got a chance today, and that's killer.
Final word for me is that you probably shouldn't use that word, Bob Huggins. I don't know what is going to happen to old Huggy Bear at West Virginia, who has won a lot of games and brought a lot of success to his alma mater, to Morgantown, has been a steward of the game of college basketball for a long time. But, buddy, you cannot go on a massively powerful radio station and use a very obvious and extremely hurtful and inappropriate homophobic slur like you did twice today. There's no arguing, it just slipped out, or, X, Y, or Z reason why you feel bad about it. Dude, you said it once and then added a qualifier and said it again. That is inappropriate. I would not be shocked if that's it for Bob Huggins at West Virginia, but there's got to be someone laying down the law because, good Lord, that is just Gross. That does it for 580 Sports Talk on this Monday afternoon. We'll be back tomorrow from 3 until 6. We'll talk some Kansas Jayhawks football and basketball with Michael Swain. We'll get to more on the start of the Kansas City Royals series with the White Sox and so much more. That's tomorrow from 3 until 6. But until then, for Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Dworzinski. Appreciate you guys as always for listening along to 580 Sports Talk.